Hey guys, tonight we drift downriver, past moonlit reeds, crocodile eyes peeking from murky shallows, and fishermen humming to the rhythm of ancient spells. You don't know it yet, but you're about to time travel so hard you might wake up in hieroglyphic form. That's right, we're diving headfirst into three very different ancient worlds. The golden calm of Egypt, the marble chaos of Rome, and the frosty sagas of Viking Scandinavia. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. Sun gods, gladiators, and axe-hurling Norsemen. Best case scenario, you end up mummified, buried under volcanic ash, or frozen mid-raid. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sway in a wooden boat, the Nile glimmering under stars like polished obsidian. Papyrus plants whisper in the breeze. Every sound is soft, hushed, reverent. Egypt sleeps, but not you. You're being rowed upstream, past crocodile-haunted banks and heron nests, toward the heart of an empire that somehow feels both impossibly ancient and alive with energy. You step off onto warm sand just outside a village on the edge of farmland. The soil is dark, almost black, gifted by the Nile's floods. Behind you, the river hums. In front of you, a cluster of low mud brick homes, flickering torchlight, and the muffled snore of livestock. You pull your linen tunic tighter. It's not cold exactly, but the breeze carries the river's chill. Inside one house, a mother coaxes her children to sleep with stories of Ra guiding the sun barge through the underworld. She traces shapes on the wall, maybe an ibis, maybe a crocodile, while her voice rises and falls like the river itself. You creep past, careful not to trip on the goats. The village is winding down, but something draws you to the edge of the fields, where two farmers sit around a low clay stove. They're roasting barley cakes and passing a gourd of beer back and forth. It's thick, warm, slightly fizzy. You're offered some, and you accept, because what else are you going to do? Say no to a 3,000-year-old brew. One of them points to the sky, naming constellations you only half recognise. Orion? No, it's Sa, the father of the gods. The Milky Way is the Nile in the sky, and Nut, the sky goddess, arches protectively above all of it. You sip, you listen, you exist for a moment between past and myth. The conversation turns to the flood. The waters came early this year, they say. Good omen. The fields will be generous, but there's always a but. Some say Apophis, the chaos serpent, stirs beneath the waves. Floods too high or too low. That's his fault. And honestly, after seeing some of the bugs here, you're half convinced Apophis is just a very aggressive water beetle. In the distance, you spot movement near a larger structure, an official-looking house with painted walls and guards dozing at the doorway. That's the estate of a local noble or scribe, maybe even a minor priest, someone who knows how to write, someone powerful, which here often means someone terrifying. In Egypt, power and magic are practically synonyms. You approach cautiously. Inside, on a raised platform, surrounded by flickering oil lamps, a man is drawing on papyrus with a reed brush. His posture is perfect. His concentration is unbroken. The script flows like river water. Beautiful, rigid, and deeply mysterious. This is not doodling. This is spellwork, protection charms, a letter to the gods, maybe even taxes. One of the most mainstream historical facts about ancient Egypt is how essential writing was, not just for records but for maintaining cosmic order, or ma'at. Without writing, they believed the universe would unravel. Imagine your grocery list being the only thing keeping the stars aligned. You tiptoe away, suddenly aware of how many eyes seem to be watching. Statues, painted eyes, maybe real ones. It's hard to tell. You pass another house where an old woman chants over a bowl of herbs and ash. The scent hits you like a sandstorm of mint and rot. She's trying to banish a toothache demon. You think she might be winning. Here's a quirky tidbit. Egyptian children often wore nothing but jewellery until they hit puberty. Practical? Sure. But you keep trying not to look too closely at the happy toddler sprinting by in just a fish-shaped pendant. As the night deepens, the stars blaze brighter. You find yourself back by the river. A young man hums as he lowers a net into the water. Fish glint like silver coins in the dark. He doesn't notice you. Or maybe he does and just doesn't care. After all, who's got time to worry about mysterious sleepwalkers when you've got catfish to catch and offerings to prepare? You lie down on a reed mat someone left near a shrine. The cool scent of water, smoke and earth wraps around you. You start to wonder, did Egyptians dream like we do? Did they toss and turn over awkward temple crushes? Or argue with imaginary priests in their sleep? Historians still argue whether dreams were considered divine messages or just nighttime noise. An ibis shrieks from somewhere upriver. You shift. You're tired, so tired, but the world keeps whispering through rustling reeds, distant chants, and the quiet giggle of a child not quite asleep. Your eyes close. The Nile flows. The Nile murmurs behind you as you rise, brushing sand from your tunic and stretching beneath a lavender sky. Dawn in Egypt arrives like a slow kiss. First the soft bruising of stars, then pinks, then a fireburst of gold. You squint eastward. There, crawling above the horizon, is Ra himself, steering his flaming bark across the sky. Good morning, sun god. Try not to fry anyone today. A procession stirs in the distance. Sandaled feet slap rhythmically against packed earth. You move toward it, curiosity tugging at your heels. Lining the path are onlookers in linen shifts and beaded collars, all whispering with the same reverent buzz, the palace. And just like that, you're trailing behind an honour guard of fan-bearers, musicians, and lotus-scattering attendants. Somewhere ahead, shielded from view, is a member of the royal family, or at least someone with enough gold around their neck to cause lower back problems. You're herded through tall gates into a walled courtyard, fragrant with myrrh and crushed sycamore leaves. You hesitate, should you be here? But no one stops you. A blessing of being half dream, half witness. Inside, the palace is not what you expected. No towering pillars of marble or glittering fountains. Mud brick walls painted with scenes of gods and battles. Ceilings low, rooms small, but decorated in intense, saturated colours. You feel like you've wandered into someone's jewellery box. You slip through a colonnade and into the main hall just as a scribe reads a list of complaints from local farmers. One claims his neighbour's goat trampled his barley. Another insists his wife's perfume business is cursed by jealous priests. You stifle a yawn. Bureaucracy, eternal as the Nile. Then the pharaoh enters. You expect trumpets, thunder, lightning, maybe an actual solar flare. Instead, it's a teenage boy. Smooth face, heavy eyeliner, feet bare. His gaze, though, it could turn granite into pudding. He doesn't speak. He simply nods, and everyone bows so low you worry someone might dislocate a spine. You're ushered out before you can get a better look, but someone mistakes you for a servant. You roll with it. Congratulations, you're now on linen fan duty. Your job is to walk behind one of the palace attendants and gently waft cool air toward the back of her shaved, oiled head. It's glamorous work, you know. You pretend not to panic when she glances back and raises an eyebrow. The palace runs like a living machine. Servants sweep and polish constantly. Slaves bring trays of dates and figs. Courtiers whisper and flash practiced smiles. A tiny dog yaps at your feet. You dodge it and find yourself in the royal garden. This place is different, lush, hidden. Water lilies float in tiled pools. Palm trees sway lazily. Birds squawk philosophical arguments overhead. You kneel by the water's edge and splash your face, startling a fish and possibly a minor water deity. A priest approaches, young, tall, draped. in linen so white it's almost rude. He carries a scroll and offers you a riddle. What breathes but has no lungs, gives light but is not fire. You blink. The Nile breeze, you guess? He laughs. Close, it's Pharaoh's will. And just like that he's gone, leaving you wondering if you accidentally joined a cult again. Here's a historical fact that might surprise you. Many pharaohs weren't as all-powerful as they appeared. Their authority depended heavily on their court, the priesthood, and whether the Nile had recently cooperated. A bad flood year? Suddenly your divine status is on very thin ice. Or in this case, thin mud. And now for a fringe fact. Some scholars think certain Egyptian rulers experimented with psychoactive blue lotus infusions. Mood lighting, scented air, and subtle tripping? That might explain the talking statues and cobra motifs. You're directed to a storeroom where wooden chests are being unpacked. Gifts from Nubia, leopard skins, ivory combs. One box contains a shimmering electrum dagger. Another, strangely, just baskets of dried locusts. Delicacy? Curse bait? Both? You lift a carved headrest. Hard, uncomfortable, slightly cursed-looking. Egyptians used them as pillows to keep elaborate hairstyles intact, and supposedly ward off evil spirits. Practical and paranoid, a timeless combination. In a quieter wing, you find a young girl practicing harp music. The tune is hypnotic, minor key, unsettling in a beautiful way. Her eyes are closed, lips moving silently. Maybe it's a hymn. Maybe she's calculating how to escape an arranged marriage. Historians still argue whether royal women had more agency than records suggest, or whether that's just modern wishful thinking. You sit cross-legged in the corridor, soaking it all in. The music, the scent of resin, the clatter of sandals on polished stone. You realise the palace is less about luxury and more about control. Every hallway reminds you who's watching. Every wall painting reinforces the same divine order. You sneak back to the courtyard just as dancers begin their routine, slow, fluid movements punctuated by cymbals and the occasional sharp laugh. One dancer winks at you. You wink back, then trip over a decorative basket and nearly destroy a 2,000-year-old fern. Smooth. Later, in the kitchen, massive pots bubble with lentil stew. You're handed a wedge of flatbread still warm from the clay oven. You inhale it in 4 bites. A cook eyes you suspiciously, then tosses you a handful of dates as a reward for not dropping dead on the floor. As twilight bleeds into the palace walls, you're led outside once again. The air cools, torches are lit. The day shifts from labour to ritual. Priests chant, incense smoulders, and high on a rooftop, the young pharaoh watches the sun disappear behind the river, his silhouette crowned by the dying light. You sit at the palace steps, knees hugged to your chest. You've seen a god-kid scowl, waved, a palm fan, and eaten bread that predates gluten-free trends by several millennia. The palace doors creak shut behind you, and the stars blink back into place like they never left. You wake to soft jingles. A donkey plods past, carts stacked high with woven baskets. The streets are live now, still dust-choked, still humming with flies, but buzzing with purpose. You follow your nose toward a strange mix of honey, ink, and something faintly fishy. It's morning in ancient Egypt, and it smells like ambition. Around the corner you spot them, students. Dozens of boys in linen kilts, some already seated cross-legged beneath a shady awning, others still sprinting in with wax tablets and reed pens. You blend into the crowd, unnoticed, and drop onto a woven mat beside a particularly nervous-looking kid. His lip trembles every time the teacher clears his throat. This isn't your average elementary school. It's the House of Life, a temple-run scribal academy. Here, the future record keepers, astrologers, and possibly evil tax collectors of Egypt sharpen their minds and their reed pens. Today's lesson? Copying proverbs. Lines like, "Do not speak unless you can improve the silence," which is wise advice unless you're trying to explain how you just spilled ink on your teacher's sandals. You borrow a stylus and press into the wax tablet. The surface resists slightly, but it's oddly satisfying, like writing in butter, if butter had a bad attitude. A fly lands on your arm. You flick it away, only to realise that's now part of your sentence. You look around. A few boys are reciting multiplication tables. Yes, math existed. Sorry to break it to you. Others are busy drawing little birds, eyes and squiggles that mean everything from cow to eternal flame. Hieroglyphs are no joke. One symbol can represent a sound, a whole word, or a divine concept depending on context, moon phase, and probably how well rested your pet cat is. The teacher passes by, scowling. You smile innocently. He snorts and walks on. That was close. Here's your mainstream fact. Egyptian scribes were among the most powerful people in the kingdom. They could read, write, and therefore command law, trade, and temple bureaucracy. Some didn't even pay taxes. Literacy was currency, and these kids were about to be rich in influence. After lessons, your class is led into the temple courtyard. You expect discipline. What you get is cake, honey cakes, sweet, warm, sticky things shaped like tiny pyramids. A reward for a hard morning of recitation and ink stains. One student boasts he ate 15 last week. Another claims his father is the vizier and has honey delivered in jars shaped like baby hippos. You pretend to care while licking frosting off your fingers. In a shaded alcove, a priest demonstrates an embalming charm. He sprinkles natron over a clay dummy, chanting something in a tone that could either raise the dead or summon a really judgmental cat. "Don't breathe it in," whispers the nervous boy beside you. "Last week, someone did, and fainted for 3 hours." The fringe tidbit of the day. Ancient Egyptian priests shaved every hair on their bodies before rituals, including eyebrows. Hygiene met superstition in a very committed way. Smooth as a palm leaf, spiritually protected, and utterly incapable of making facial expressions. After the temple visit, you're dismissed. The students scatter like startled doves. Some run toward the river, others toward the bazaar. One kid proudly waves a beetle he swears will bring him luck on tomorrow's quiz. You follow a group heading toward a workshop. Inside, low benches, bundles of papyrus and vats of ink, made from soot and gum arabic. An older scribe demonstrates how to trim a reed pen just right, slicing with a tiny obsidian knife. You lean closer. The edge gleams sharper than anything you've seen. Stone, yes, but sharper than modern scalpels. Egyptians didn't just invent papyrus, they practically invented the office supply store. A young apprentice offers to show you how to make red ink. He mashes ochre powder into a little bowl and stirs it with water. It looks like blood, but smells like warm sand. "For important things," he says, "spells, names of gods, stuff that gets you cursed if you mess it up." You nod solemnly and immediately spill some on your tunic. He shrugs. "Now you're important." Later you visit the school library. It's not books on shelves. It's scrolls in clay jars, tucked away in niches like sacred snakes. You pull one at random. It's a recipe for aphrodisiac perfume involving lotus petals, myrrh, and something politely labelled goat part unspecified. You decide not to ask. There's debate even now about how widespread literacy was outside elite circles. Historians still argue whether farmers and artisans learned basic writing or simply hired scribes for everything. From wills to break-up notes, the truth likely drifts somewhere in between, like a papyrus raft on the current of time. The afternoon fades. You wander the school grounds, watching a teacher correct a student's grammar with the gentleness of a crocodile in a tutu. You hear a group of older students composing a mock hymn about how Ra's boat gets lost every Thursday and blames Seth. You hear giggles, sandals slapping, reeds rustling. You pause beside a carved wall, a recent addition. It shows a boy bowing to Thoth, god of wisdom, while a monkey watches nearby. You're pretty sure that monkey is holding a scroll, or maybe a pastry. Either way, it feels deeply relatable. You linger a moment longer, fingers brushing the warm stone. The symbols, some precise, others hurried, feel alive. This isn't just writing, it's magic in bureaucratic form. And here, among nervous scribes and smug monkeys, you start to understand how knowledge itself became sacred. As the sun droops, casting long shadows across the temple walls, you follow the last students down toward the village. Their chatter fades as they disappear into the warren of alleyways and courtyards. You turn once more to the school behind you, its walls pink with fading light, its windows flickering with the last glimmers of oil lamps. Somewhere inside, a boy scrawls a dream across a wax tablet, then erases it with a sigh. You smile. The sun dips lower, pulling shadows across the land like a lazy scribe smearing ink. You wander south toward the edge of the village, where desert and destiny begin to blur. Far ahead, rising from the golden horizon, like teeth of the gods, the pyramids wait, angular, ancient, and absurdly enormous. You trudge forward, sandals filling with sand. The closer you get, the more surreal they become. Smooth blocks the size of ox carts, stacked impossibly high. You squint upward and almost fall backward. You wonder, not for the first time, how these things were built. Ramps, aliens, very determined squirrels. Historians still argue whether straight ramps, spirals, or sheer miracles hauled these stones skyward. You're approached by a dusty man with an even dustier clipboard. He wears a short kilt, one sandal, and the expression of someone who hasn't napped since last flood season. "You knew," he grunts. You nod. "Perfect. Grab a sled. Team C's behind the obelisk with the goat." Before you can explain that you don't technically work here, or own a goat, you're handed a jug of water and pointed toward a crew of men, chanting rhythmically as they pull a stone block across slick mud. The mud is poured ahead of the sled to reduce friction. Simple, genius, backbreaking. You pitch in. The stone creaks forward. Your shoulders ache. A boy tosses you a figure's thanks. Somewhere, a supervisor yells about timelines. Even in ancient Egypt, deadlines are serious business. Here's your historical fact of the day. The workers who built the pyramids weren't slaves. They were skilled labourers, often paid in bread, beer and respect. Their tombs suggest pride and dignity, along with some pretty, incredible lunch breaks. At midday, everyone pauses. The shadow of the pyramid provides a brief cool haven. Workers cluster together, chewing on onions and flatbread, sharing stories about the latest building accident or the weird bird that keeps stealing sandals. Someone claims the pharaoh visits in disguise to check the work. Someone else swears he saw a god arguing with a mason over limestone quality. You sit beside an older man sharpening copper tools. "Want to hear a joke?" he says without waiting for an answer. "What did the brick say to the architect?" You blink. "Nothing. Bricks don't talk." You laugh anyway. Maybe it's the heat. The fringe fact today: there's graffiti inside the pyramids. Workers left jokes, nicknames, and messages on the stones. Some praising their team, others just bored doodles. Imagine risking your neck hauling a block up a mile-long ramp only to carve "Team Hot Chisel was here" inside the king's chamber. Humans have always been delightfully ridiculous. After lunch, you wander away from the main crew and find a smaller group chipping at a limestone casing block. These are the smooth, white outer layers, the shiny skin that once made pyramids gleam like sunlight made solid. Most of those outer stones are gone now, stolen by later builders or earthquakes. But back then, they shimmered. One artisan shows you how to polish the surface with sandstone. Another offers a brush made of palm fibres soaked in vinegar to clean the corners. The level of precision is startling. This isn't brute force, it's care, craft, obsession. You're invited up a scaffold. Don't look down, and suddenly the view spreads before you. The desert to the west, flat and endless. To the east, the green ribbon of the Nile, curled like a snake in repose. Behind you, the pyramid rises even higher, block after block after block, scraping at the sky. You sit for a moment, panting, fingers curled around the edge of the scaffold. Far below, oxen trudge in circles turning cranes. Ropes creak, men shout, dust rises. It's chaos, but organised, rhythmic chaos. Like a symphony conducted by sheer willpower and slightly overworked supervisors. You ask how long this one has taken. The man beside you squints, then shrugs. 15 years, maybe more. He scratches his beard. Long enough that I can't remember what my wife's cooking smells like. There's a pause. Still? Beats farming? That's the thing. Building a pyramid isn't just an act of construction. It's a national project, a divine promise. The pharaoh ensures balance in the cosmos by being entombed just right, just high, just expensive enough. If he gets it wrong, eternal chaos. Crops die, cats hiss. Worst case scenario, no more beer. You descend as the sun begins to slide toward the hills. Your legs are shaking, your arms are jelly. You feel oddly proud of having done almost nothing useful, but sweating very convincingly. You pass a group of children playing near some discarded stones. One pretends to be the pharaoh, ordering the others to build a pyramid from broken bricks and potsherds. Another insists she's a god and throws sand like lightning bolts. You smile. Some dynamics never change. Down at the base, a tiny shrine sits tucked behind a massive block. A worker pauses to leave an offering. Bread, a flower, a muttered prayer. You follow his gaze. The pyramid looms, unbothered by time or footsteps. It doesn't need attention, it simply is. As dusk falls, lanterns flicker to life. The crew gathers around a fire, muscles sore, jokes louder now, bellies growling. A woman from the nearby village brings lentil stew. You eat, you laugh. Someone hands you a chunk of roasted fish. You accept. Far off, a drumbeat begins. Slow, methodical. Workers begin to sway. One grabs a reed flute, another claps. You realise this isn't a job site. It's a town, a rhythm, a life. You sit back, warm and weary, watching the pyramid glow faintly in the moonlight. And for a moment, just a breath, you understand why someone might spend their whole life lifting stones to the heavens. A distant bleating wakes you. Not a majestic ancient trumpet or priestly chant, just an irritable goat disagreeing with a chicken. You blink. The air smells like incense, dust, and something vaguely floral? You're in a different part of town now, somewhere richer with carefully swept doorways, pots of lotus blooms, and guards at the corners pretending not to nap. You hear giggles, human and feline. You follow the sound into a courtyard where a woman lounges on a low stool, brushing thick black eyeliner along her eyelids. Her maid dabs scented oil behind her ears. 2 cats laze in the sun nearby, judging everything. She sees you and smirks. Don't stare, she says, in a tone that means do stare. You'll smear your coal. You touch your own face. No makeup. Yet. She tosses a small bowl toward you. Inside is a dark, waxy substance. Eyeliner, she says. Keeps the glare down. Also looks fabulous. You try it. The smell is sharp, lead and spices. You smear a little beneath your eyes and suddenly feel 20% more powerful. Also slightly poisonous. Mainstream fact incoming. Egyptians weren't just into makeup for vanity. Their cosmetics had real medicinal and ritual functions. Coal helped protect against eye infections, especially in a land where dust and light were relentless. The maid adds, also keeps away evil spirits, she winks, especially ex-boyfriends. You wander into a side room filled with tiny ceramic jars. One's marked with a faded crocodile symbol. You sniff, regret it instantly. Sunscreen, she says, fanning herself, made with dung and oil. Very protective, very aromatic. You suppress a gag. Fringe fact? Yep, some Egyptian skincare did involve crocodile dung. The exact effectiveness is debatable. The aroma, less so. Next door, a teenage boy sits patiently as his sister braids amulets into his hair. Protection for his exams, she explains, also to impress Nefertari. You raise an eyebrow. She likes boys who smell like cinnamon and know their lunar phases, he shrugs. You explore further and find a workshop lined with mirrors, polished copper discs hung carefully on reed walls. A woman tests out lip tints made of red ochre and animal fat. Another tries on earrings shaped like tiny anchors. The fashion here isn't just fabulous, it's powerful. Jewellery carries meaning. Scarabs for rebirth, eyes of Horus for safety, frogs for fertility. You realise people aren't just decorating, they're armouring their spirits. You sit while a perfumer offers a dab of something musky and floral behind your ear. She raises a brow. Sandalwood, myrrh and date sap. Expensive, probably too good for you. She's right, it smells like heaven and hubris. Outside, a procession of cats parades through the alley. No humans, just cats, well-fed, bejewelled, vaguely smug. One wears a tiny golden collar, another has its own cushioned litter carried by two giggling girls. You follow the fluffy parade into a small shrine lit with votive flames. Inside stands a statue of Bastet, goddess of protection, fertility, and of course, cats. A priestess hums softly while offering fish and milk at the altar. The cats seem pleased. One rubs your leg in approval. Here's the thing, Egyptians loved cats, not just, oh how cute, love, but divine, holy, house-burning revenge love. Kill a cat? You might face execution. Accidentally insult a cat. Social exile. Touch a cat's food without permission. Good luck ever getting married again. There's even a recorded case of soldiers refusing to attack a town because cats lived there. That's dedication. Or fear. Possibly both. Back outside, children are playing a game involving palm sticks and leather balls. One of them calls to you, "You're on our team!" Before you can protest, you're handed a stick and told to defend a goal marked by two painted stones. The game is chaotic, loud, and ends when someone's cat sits on the ball and refuses to move. You rest under a tree, sipping cool tamarind juice, while watching a woman paint symbols onto a clay amulet. She's muttering softly. When asked what she's saying, she responds, "Protection against backstabbing." And wrinkles. It's hard to tell which worries her more. Historians still argue whether personal amulets were believed to literally ward off misfortune or simply represent hopeful intention. Either way, people wore them everywhere, from ankles to armpits. One man reportedly had an eye of Horus tattooed on his tongue. Unclear why, but we're guessing it was not for kissing blessings. You're invited to join a small feast in a nearby garden. Roasted duck, lentil stew, melon slices, honeyed beer. You eat alongside neighbours trading gossip. Who bought new sandals, who's sneaking off with the baker's apprentice, who built a secret cat shrine inside the goat shed. The conversation turns to dreams. One woman says she dreamt of drowning in perfume and now refuses to wear anything but frankincense. Another says Bastet visited her, whispered a secret name, and then knocked over a vase. She's playful, she shrugs. Night falls, and someone lights an oil lamp shaped like a lion. You lean back on a reed cushion, eyelids heavy, heart full of roasted duck and divine sass. The cats begin to circle again, some curling into laps, others perched atop pottery, tails twitching. You run your fingers through your newly cold lashes, sniff your sandalwood-scented wrist, and realise you've been pampered, powdered, and possibly spiritually adopted by a feline deity. It's not a bad look. You awaken to the unmistakable sound of haggling, sharp voices, overlapping, dramatic. If musical theatre and a street brawl had a baby, it would be the morning market in Memphis. No, not Elvis Memphis, the other one. The one with donkeys and date cakes. You blink against the sun and find yourself pressed into a crowd where people move like schools of fish, but much sweatier. The ground's packed hard from years of foot traffic, and maybe a little goat traffic too. You sidestep a low cart stacked with leeks and nearly trip over a basket of squirming eels. Welcome to the bazaar. A vendor calls to you, shaking a bunch of garlic like it's a bouquet of love. For protection, he insists, against illness or ex-wives. You're not sure whether to laugh or take 2 cloves and run. You duck under an awning strung with beaded curtains. Inside, the air is cooler, scented with oils and gossip. A woman arranges turquoise amulets in little pyramids. Another braids perfume sticks out of pressed petals. Smell this, she says, offering a sliver of resin. It's frankincense. It burns your nose in a pleasant way. You're offered a lucky scarab carved from carnelian. The vendor assures you it guarantees wealth and fertility. You raise an eyebrow. Both? He nods solemnly. And possibly goats. You buy it, just in case. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Memphis was once the capital of Egypt, long before Thebes or Alexandria rose to glory. It was a bustling metropolis of traders, craftsmen, and administrators. Think Wall Street meets SimCity, but with more papyrus and significantly more donkeys. You pause at a stall where a man paints eyes onto little clay dolls. For the gods to see you, he explains, then adds, and for your enemies to know they're watched. That's comforting, sort of. A loud shout draws your attention to a commotion near the granary. 2 men are arguing about grain weights. One swears his scales are honest. The other claims divine sabotage. A crowd gathers. Someone starts placing bets. It's all fun until a priest walks by, and everyone suddenly becomes very interested in their sandals. Temples and markets live side by side here. 1 minute you're bartering for onions, the next you're dodging a sacred goose on its way to ritual purification. Speaking of which, you pass a procession of priests bearing incense burners and elaborately dressed cows. One of the cows wears jewellery. You do a double take. It looks better accessorised than you. At the edge of the square, a group of foreigners, Asiatics, maybe Nubians, display strange glittering wares, mirrors of polished tin, blue glass beads, and fabrics dyed colours you don't even have names for. A girl offers you a sweet pastry with something crunchy inside. Lotus seeds, she says. You nod appreciatively, even as your teeth question your life choices. Here's your fringe tidbit. Some evidence suggests merchants used small, portable scales disguised as jewellery to cheat or prove honesty, depending on the situation. Imagine a necklace that also tells you someone's trying to short you on cumin. Peak efficiency. Nearby, a man demonstrates a new kind of fish trap using reeds and sticky resin. It's wildly popular, until his apprentice knocks over the demo tank and releases a dozen slippery fish into the crowd. You help scoop one into a bowl. It stares at you with ancient judgment. A child tugs your tunic, offering hand-carved dice. For Sinette, he says, holding up a scratched game board. You sit and play around. He wins, twice. You suspect divine interference. You meander into the weaving district. The thud of looms fills the air. Women sit in rows, rhythmically threading flax into linen, humming old hymns and swatting flies. One pulls you aside and shows you how to twist thread using a weighted spindle. You try. It immediately unravels. She smiles politely. You pass the potters next, spinning clay on wheels, shaping bowls, jars, and what appears to be a pig in a top hat. Just experimenting, the potter shrugs. Art never sleeps. You overhear a heated debate near a statue of Thoth. 2 scribes are arguing. One insists the latest lunar calendar is miscalculated. The other claims Thoth whispered it to him in a dream. Historians still argue whether Egypt's astronomical records were purely observational or also influenced by political and religious agendas. Either way, no one's budging. Lunch hits the market like a tidal wave. Stalls offer chickpea stew, roasted quail, lentils with garlic, and skewered meat spiced with cumin. You sit on a cracked bench and accept a bowl from a vendor who calls everyone my sunshine. You're 80% sure he means it. 20% sure it's a trick to upsell you more stew. As you eat, a woman sits beside you. Priests are raising prices again, she mutters. They say it's for a temple roof, but last week I saw one with gold sandals. You nod sympathetically, mouthful of quail. She narrows her eyes. You're not from here, are you? You swallow. I'm visiting, she shrugs. Just don't buy anything from the guy with the green beard. He's cursed 6 pots this week. You make a mental note. Afternoon stretches long and hot. Many vendors nap behind their stalls, shaded by woven mats and lazy cats. A pair of children plays a game involving pebbles and what may be a partially mummified frog. No one seems concerned. You browse a scroll stall. The merchant lets you unroll one. It's a hymn to Osiris written in flowing hieratic script. You trace the faded lines with your finger, heart slowing. Even here, in the middle of chaos, there's poetry, reverence, beauty. The breeze shifts. The market begins to fold up. Baskets are packed, curtains rolled, chickens gathered, sometimes reluctantly. As you step away, a girl hands you a flower crown made of papyrus and lotus. For your head, she grins, or your dreams. You place it gently and walk into the dimming light, sweet resin clinging to your fingers, the sound of the city still echoing behind your eyes. The sun slouches toward the horizon, casting long shadows that stretch like sleepy arms across the fields. You wander out of the marketplace, following a narrow path that hugs a winding canal. Reeds sway, frogs chirp. Somewhere nearby, someone's playing a double reed flute that sounds like a goose with stage fright. But somehow, it's soothing. Ahead you spot something strange. A procession. Slow, solemn, and unmistakably serious. Men in white linen robes carry a litter covered with dark cloth. Behind them trail priests muttering incantations, a few crying relatives, and wait, a guy holding a basket of onions. Oddly specific snack, but okay. You step aside as they pass and catch sight of a wooden coffin carved with intricate symbols. The face painted on the lid is serene. The person inside probably didn't feel that way, but let's not ruin the mood. You trail behind, unnoticed, curiosity outweighing your growing dread. They're headed toward a cluster of mud brick structures nestled at the base of a rocky outcrop. The air changes. Less spice and smoke, more salt and... what is that? Natron. The natural salt used to dry out the dead. You wrinkle your nose. This is going to get weird. Welcome to the house of embalming. Inside, low ceilings, stone slabs, jars upon jars of strange substances, and the general vibe of a spa run by extremely polite necromancers. The body is placed on a tilted table. A priest wearing a jackal mask begins to chant. And you? You're stuck behind a pillar, hoping no one notices you're not dead, and definitely not on staff. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Mummification wasn't just for royalty. Many Egyptians, especially wealthier commoners, underwent the process to preserve their bodies for the afterlife. It was a detailed spiritual and surprisingly expensive ritual. Step 1. Remove the brain. A hooked tool is inserted through the nostril, and the brain is basically whisked out like a protein shake gone wrong. You wince. Someone in the corner gags. Classic newbie move. Next, the internal organs are removed, carefully and with reverence. The stomach, liver, lungs, and intestines are cleaned and stored in canopic jars, each guarded by a specific deity. Your personal favourite? The baboon-headed one, because nothing says eternal guardian like a holy primate with opinions. Now, the body is stuffed and covered in natron for 40 days. It dries out like ancient beef jerky, just slightly more divine. Fringe fact, in some cases the embalmers left little messages inside the wrappings, prayers, charms, even jokes. One discovered mummy had a note tucked near the ribs that roughly translates to, "Watch out for snakes." Classic. While the body rests, the family prepares for the funerary rites. You follow them into another chamber, A woman sits beside the coffin, brushing oil onto a mask made of gold leaf and paint. "So they'll be recognized by Osiris," she whispers. "And so they'll look good at the trial." Ah, yes, the trial. Ancient Egyptians believed that after death, your soul was judged in the Hall of Two Truths. Your heart was weighed against a feather. Too heavy with sin, a crocodile, hippo, lion hybrid named Amit devoured it. You did not want to meet Amit, but if you passed, eternal paradise, fields of reeds, cool breezes, endless beer. The family prepares a set of ashabti, tiny statues meant to come to life in the afterlife and do your chores. Honestly, we could use some now. You resist the urge to pocket one. They're watching. Back in the embalming room, the body is now wrapped in linen bandages soaked in resin, layer after layer after layer. The air smells like pine, incense, and mystery. Amulets are slipped between wrappings. A scarab is placed over the heart. Prayers are whispered over each knot. The mask is placed on the face. The wrappings are sealed. You watch as the coffin is carefully closed. The room is silent. The head priest places a hand on the lid and intones a final blessing. May your name live forever. You feel the weight of it. The quiet, the hope, the ancient gamble that someone somewhere might remember you. The funeral procession begins again. They carry the coffin to a small boat waiting on the Nile's edge. Torches flicker. A crocodile lurks nearby, indifferent. The boat rocks as it pushes off into the current, heading west, toward the land of the dead, the setting sun, the eternal horizon. You stand on the riverbank, the silt cool under your feet. The family lingers, someone sings. A child places a lotus flower in the water and whispers something that's carried away by the breeze. Historians still argue whether average Egyptians feared death or embraced it with structured optimism. Maybe both, but they certainly prepared for it better than we do, with rituals, rules, and truly excellent linen work. A girl taps your arm. Want to see something? You follow her up a narrow path etched into the cliffside. At the top, a set of tombs carved into the rock. Inside, walls painted with vibrant scenes, feasts, fishing trips, lovers lounging under trees. One even shows the deceased playing sonnet with a god. You hope they let him win. You reach the last tomb and peek inside. Simple, peaceful. On the far wall, a figure stands tall, arms open. Not a king, not a warrior. Just a farmer holding a sickle surrounded by wheat and birds. "Fields of eternity," the girl says. "He made it." You nod. Night deepens. The stars arrive, silent and countless. The Nile below glows with reflected moonlight, carrying the dead gently west, while the living whisper blessings from the shore. You sit on a stone bench outside the tomb, knees hugged to your chest, not afraid, just quiet. You awaken to wet feet, which is odd considering you fell asleep on a stone bench in the dry cliffs above the Nile. But now, water laps gently at your toes. You're on a raft, a real one this time, papyrus bundled tight with twine, bobbing lazily through wide, glassy floodwaters. The Nile has risen. It's flood season, Akit, the time when the river spills its banks like an over-enthusiastic soup pot and soaks the surrounding farmlands. You drift past submerged roads, half-drowned trees and rooftops where goats stand like confused philosophers. The world has turned liquid. A young boy paddles past in a washtub. "Want a ride?" he calls, clearly joking. You wave. He flips a fish at you. A gift? A prank? Unclear. You dock your raft near a small village that seems perfectly at ease with being mostly underwater. Raised walkways connect homes. People paddle between doorways in tiny boats. A cow lounges on a thatched roof, like it's the world's saddest sea captain. You follow the sound of laughter and clanking pottery to an open space where villagers have gathered for what can only be described as a soggy party. Tables float. Lanterns bob. There's music, a rhythmic drumming that matches the slosh of oars, and singing loud enough to scare nearby ducks. Flood's good this year, someone says, pressing a cup into your hand. It's beer, slightly sour, slightly warm, and aggressively frothy. Means the god Happy's happy. You nod, trying not to spill as a child splashes by, screaming with joy. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Nile's annual flood was crucial to Egyptian survival. It fertilized the land with nutrient-rich silt, replenished water tables, and marked the agricultural calendar's reset. No flood, no food. Too much flood, also no food. The gods really knew how to keep you humble. Someone pulls you into a circle where dancers hop and sway with arms raised high. Their linen tunics stick to their skin, soaked but uncaring. You join in, mostly flailing, slightly rhythmic, and catch a smile from a woman with wild curls and gold bangles. Not bad, she says, for a dry-feet dancer. Nearby, a priest stands at a shrine half submerged in water. He raises a jug and pours beer into the Nile. To Happy, he chants, to the blue-skinned bringer of flood, the feeder of fields, the life between deserts. You notice a small statue perched on a pedestal nearly underwater. It's of a round-bellied man with pendulous breasts and reeds on his head. That's Happy, not a war god or lightning flinger, but a god of plenty. Cheerful, jiggly, kind of comforting really. A storyteller sets up on an overturned grain basket. Children gather. You do too. She tells of a time when the Nile didn't flood, when jealous gods blocked the river with a great stone. Crops withered, people despaired. A clever priestess bargained with the stone spirit, using riddles and dancing ducks. The river returned. The moral? Always respect ducks, probably. Then comes the food. Flatbread slathered with garlic and lentils, figs stuffed with nuts, fish grilled over floating clay stoves, a dish that tastes suspiciously like candied onions, but somehow works. You eat until your belly presses against your belt. Fringe tidbit: during major floods, some villages held boat races between rival farming families. The prize wasn't gold, but bragging rights, and the first pick of planting spots when the waters receded. Soggy honour is still honour. You help string up more lanterns as dusk approaches. The light turns syrupy. The water reflects everything. Clouds, faces, flames, and the world feels doubled. A little magical, a little tipsy. Musicians switch to faster rhythms. The beer flows freely now. Someone tries to dance on a roof and falls in. Applause follows. No injuries, just soggy pride. A man stumbles by in a robe dyed blue with lotus petals. "I'm happy tonight," he declares. "All offerings go to my belly." People laugh, toss him bits of fish, even coin. He bows dramatically, slips and disappears underwater for a full 10 seconds before popping back up with a victorious grin. You drift away for a moment, walking along a raised path where frogs croak in harmony. A girl sits carving symbols into a floating log. "It's a wish," she explains. "When the water takes it, the gods read it." She glances up. "You should make one," you think. Then you take her knife and carve a simple image. A boat, a little raft like yours, a reminder of movement, of going where the current takes you, even if your destination is underwater goats. You place the log in the water. It floats, spins, and drifts away. Historians still argue whether flood season was more about religious celebration or pure practical relief. After all, farming paused, taxes reset, and the world briefly turned into a water park. Maybe it was both, worship and well-earned party. Night falls. The village glows with flickering light. Torches line the walkways. Music carries over the water. Someone starts singing a hymn to Isis, soft and slow. Others join in. The melody weaves through the reeds like a gentle current. You lie back on your raft, arms folded behind your head, belly full, head buzzing just enough. Above stars, below stars reflected. Around you laughter splashes, the clink of pottery and the thrum of drums. The Nile rises, and you float on. The laughter of the flood village fades behind you as you drift farther south. The waters have begun to recede, revealing black silted fields, soggy roads, and very annoyed ducks. You walk now, barefoot along the edge of the waterline, mud squelching satisfyingly between your toes. The Nile, calmer now, snakes beside you like an old friend ready to tell you something important. Ahead, the landscape changes. Flat farmland gives way to low dunes and scrubby brush. Then you see it, a long train of people, animals, and wagons stretching like a caterpillar across the desert. A caravan. Spices, gems, incense, copper, leopard skins, and all the sunburn you can handle. This is the business side of ancient Egypt. Trade routes that stretched for hundreds of miles through blazing heat and occasional scorpion drama. You slip into the crowd somewhere near the back, falling in beside a boy leading a donkey with an absolutely massive attitude. The donkey snorts at you, you snort back. Mutual respect is established. The caravan leader, a wiry woman with sun-leathered skin and a voice like gravel stirred with honey, barks orders. Water skins. Check. Offerings for dessert gods. Double check. Last person to feed the camel gets night watch. You get the sense she hasn't slept since last planting season. You like her immediately. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Egypt's wealth wasn't just homegrown. It came from its position as a trade nexus, linking Africa, the Near East, and even lands as far as India. Caravans like this carried perfumes, lapis lazuli, elephant ivory, ostrich feathers, even monkeys. No refunds if they scream. You're handed a bundle of dates and a dried fig. Rations, not gourmet, but you chew contentedly as the caravan begins to move. The rhythm of footsteps on sand settles into a kind of meditative beat. A priest hums a protection hymn. A merchant counts aloud in 4 languages. A girl beside you tells the same joke about camel spit 8 times. The sun climbs high. Heat rises in shimmering waves. You wrap your head with a linen cloth and shade your eyes with a palm frond. The donkey steals it. You let him. His needs are clearly greater. By midday, the group reaches an ancient way station. Stone pillars rising like broken teeth from the dunes. There's a well here, cool, surprisingly clear, and ringed with graffiti. You read a few etched notes. Blessings to my mother, who will never read this. Avoid the figs at Luxor. Trust me. Seneb was here and tired. You refill your water skin and share dried fish with a trader named Bak. He tells you of Nubian gold fields and a coastal land where people walk backward to confuse ghosts. You nod. Seems legit. Fringe tidbit time. Some ancient Egyptian travellers carried small jars of holy Nile water to pour on foreign soil, claiming it warded off sickness and loneliness. Superstitious? Maybe, but also oddly sweet. The caravan moves on. By late afternoon, the desert begins to shift again. Rocky ridges, a cave here and there, jackals yipping in the distance. You pass a carved stone marker with faded glyphs and a half-finished warning. Beware the... And then a big scratch. Classic. Suddenly the woman ahead of you shouts. The caravan halts. Raiders? Nope. Monkeys? A whole troop, dancing around a stash of stolen supplies. One has a necklace, another wears a turban. It is the best and worst flash mob you've ever seen. The merchants throw dates to distract them. The monkeys throw figs back. A standstill. Eventually, the group regains enough of their gear to move on, minus some pride and 1 pair of sandals. The monkeys keep the sandals. As dusk approaches, the group makes camp. Fires are lit, bread is baked on hot stones. Someone plays a lute, plaintive, plucky, and slightly out of tune. You sit with the guards, roasting lentils and swapping tales of ghosts seen in sandstorms and travellers who vanished mid-sentence. Historians still argue whether desert guides used real maps or navigated purely by stars, scent, and incredibly detailed gossip. Whatever the method, it worked most of the time. Later, as the fires burn low The caravan leader leads a short ritual. She sprinkles salt in a circle, lights incense, and offers a prayer to the desert gods. Keep us cool, keep us moving, and let the camels behave. You sleep that night under a sky smeared with stars. The sand is warm beneath you, the air dry and still. Somewhere, a hyena laughs. In your dreams, you walk an endless path of gold through a sunless land. You carry a jar filled with Nile water. Behind you trails a monkey in stolen jewellery. You don't ask questions. The next morning, the caravan crests a ridge and finally reaches a trade hub, nestled between dunes. It's not huge, but it hums with energy. Tents stretch in colourful stripes. People barter loudly in a dozen dialects. The smell of roasted nuts, sweet wine, and camel lingers in the air. You wander through stalls selling turquoise, obsidian, scrolls of questionable poetry, and perfumes that smell like sunlit tombs. A man tries to sell you a scarab he insists once belonged to a prince. Which prince, you ask? All of them? You politely decline. As you sip from a clay cup of cold hibiscus tea, you realise something. This place, loud and dusty, and filled with fish jerky and ambition, is the beating heart of something ancient and beautiful. Not just survival, but connection. Trade, stories, songs carried on the backs of donkeys. You buy a necklace carved with the symbol of happy and tuck it beneath your tunic. You've earned it. Then, as the sun begins to dip once more, you follow the caravan as it turns north, back toward home, back toward the Nile. By the time you see Thebes rising in the distance, you've grown used to the rhythm of travel, the shuffle of sandals on sand, the squawk of over-caffeinated ibis, and the weird intimacy of sleeping 6 inches away from a snoring merchant who insists on hugging his spice sacks. But Thebes is different. Its skyline bristles with obelisks and temple pylons, all shimmering under the late afternoon sun like teeth carved by gods. Palms line the riverbank. Banners flutter. Priests chant somewhere out of view. This isn't just a city. It's a sacred theatre, and you're about to stumble onto the main stage. You disembark at a dusty dock, still smelling faintly of donkey and optimism. The city pulses with layered noise, vendors hawking charms, temple bells ringing, servants haggling over pomegranate prices. You follow the flow until you reach the edge of something massive. Karnak, not a temple, a universe in stone. You crane your neck to see the columns, each one wide enough to hide a chariot. The carvings on their surfaces twist upward, like hieroglyphic vines. Gods offering life, pharaohs smiting enemies, birds, bulls, boats, and lotus flowers galore. You walk between them, dwarfed, breath shallow. Your sandals echo faintly. The air here feels different, cooled by stone thick with incense, and vaguely judgmental. A priest notices you and waves you in. Just like that, you're swept into a twilight ritual already in motion. Candles flicker, harps whisper. A boy burns myrrh in a golden bowl, while an astronomer draws star maps on the floor in crushed chalk. You find yourself beside a woman, painting celestial patterns on a ceiling beam. She murmurs the names of constellations as she works. Sa, Sopdet, Mesketiu. You recognise Orion, Sirius, and the Big Dipper, just dressed up in their ancient finest. Mainstream fact for the night. Thebes was a spiritual epicentre of Egypt. Its temples weren't just tourist traps, they were working engines of religion, politics and science. High priests here could rival pharaohs in power. She hands you a brush. Here, she says, draw the moon. You hesitate, then paint a perfect crescent. She nods, satisfied. You're not hopeless. Elsewhere in the temple, a group of embalmers sits around a table. Not working, just relaxing. One plays a reed flute. Another carves a tiny crocodile figurine. You sit nearby and watch them argue over whether a soul must pass through 7 or 9 gates in the afterlife. 7, one says. 9, insists another. Depends if you were well behaved, a third mumbles. That shuts everyone up for a bit. You make your way to the sacred lake behind the temple. It's black glass in the moonlight, reflecting obelisks and stars like a dream you forgot but still miss. A scribe dips his fingers in and whispers a wish. You try it too, and the water feels colder than it should, like it knows something. You lie back on a warm stone. The hum of chants filters out from the temple walls. Somewhere, a boat glides past on the river, its torchlight dancing. The night here doesn't sleep. It observes. A girl sits beside you. She has ink stains on her arms and a feather in her hair. You look like someone who's seen a lot, she says. You laugh. You have no idea. She talks about stars, how they rise and fall, how priests record their paths to predict everything, from floods to festivals to royal births. You admit you can't even tell Venus from a slightly motivated beetle. She grins. Fringe tidbit. Ancient astronomers in Thebes developed star clocks, diagonal calendars marking when specific stars rose over temple doorways. They didn't just chart time, they gave it personality. You wander with her toward a smaller shrine, tucked behind the main sanctuary. It's quieter here, lit by a single oil lamp. On the walls are painted scenes not of pharaohs or gods, but of farmers, scribes, and children chasing birds. Sometimes, she says, we need to remind the gods of who we are. Inside the shrine, someone begins singing. Soft, low, almost a whisper. You recognize the language, but not the tune. It's a lullaby, meant not for children, but for the night itself. You sit down and listen. Historians still argue whether these personal hidden spaces were truly for the people or simply elite luxuries dressed in humility. But here, in the hush of the stones, it doesn't matter. It feels real. You return to the temple courtyard just as a meteor streaks across the sky. Gasps echo from every direction. Even the guards look up. For a moment, the world holds its breath, then laughter bubbles up. Relieved, joyous, maybe a little tipsy. A priest pours wine into a bowl. To the gods he toasts, and their surprisingly dramatic light shows. You're handed a cup. You drink. Later, reclining near the outer wall, you listen to two girls tell ghost stories. One swears she saw a statue blink. The other claims her cousin's amulet once started glowing during a sandstorm. You offer a tale of a monkey in a turban stealing sandals. They ask if it's true. You shrug. You doze off beneath a fig tree as the temple drums fade into the night. Dreams come fast and strange, columns rising like forests, starlight dripping from the sky, and a voice whispering your name in a dozen forgotten tongues. When you wake, the air smells like jasmine and distant prayers. You open your eyes slowly, and Thebes opens with you. A breeze tickles your face, warm and dry. You stir expecting Thebes' temple drums, maybe a cheeky ibis. Instead you hear the crunch of sandals on gravel. Then metal, lots of metal. You sit up and blink. Everything has changed. The river's still there, gliding along like it always does. But the skyline? The skyline is wrong. Gone are the gentle mud brick homes and painted columns. In their place rise straight roads, arches, aqueducts, and... Wait, is that a bathhouse? You smell olive oil, grilled meat, and ambition. Somewhere someone yells in Latin. You are absolutely not in ancient Egypt anymore. Welcome to Roman Egypt, or more broadly, the Roman world. You're standing in Alexandria, that bright and brassy gem of the Mediterranean. The city feels like it's auditioning for a promotion. Wide boulevards, polished marble, giant statues of emperors trying to look thoughtful. Down the street clatters a procession of soldiers, armour gleaming, short swords swinging. A few ride horses. One is eating something straight off a skewer. You catch a whiff. Honeyed dates and maybe roasted duck. Solid battlefield snack. You edge away from the road and into a shaded alleyway where the pace slows. Here it's quieter. Cobblers hammer sandals, scribes argue over papyrus prices, and a goat chews determinedly on a philosophical manuscript someone left out in the sun. You glance at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror hanging from a merchant's stall, still in linen, still vaguely dusty. But now you're just another provincial in the biggest empire the world has ever seen. Here's your mainstream historical fact. After Rome annexed Egypt in 30 BCE, it became the empire's breadbasket, intellectual hub, and vacation hotspot for stressed-out senators. Rome didn't just conquer, it absorbed. Then it built bathhouses. You find your way to the agora, a sprawling open market thrumming with voices in Latin, Greek, Coptic, and the international language of, "No, that price is ridiculous." You watch a Roman merchant haggle with a local over a statue of Horus wearing a toga. You're not sure who's winning. Nearby, a public notice is being posted. You squint to read it. Something about new taxes on imported spices and an imperial poetry competition in the amphitheatre. A man beside you scoffs. "Another poem about olives, no doubt." You nod wisely. Tragic. The stone under your feet is warm. The streets are cleaner than expected. People walk with purpose, some in Roman tunics, others in Egyptian garb. It's a fashion show powered by empire. You count at least 3 types of sandals before you give up. A temple looms ahead, its columns a mix of Greek flair and Egyptian symbolism. Inside, a priest offers incense to both Isis and Jupiter. You tilt your head. "Is that allowed?" you whisper. He shrugs. "Depends who's watching." That's the thing about this new world. Gods, languages, even hairstyles blend, like paint on a fresco. It's confusing, yes, but oddly beautiful. Like a dinner party where everyone brings a wildly different casserole, and somehow it works. You wander through a neighbourhood filled with tall Roman-style apartment blocks. Insulae, they call them. They look precarious, smell like cheese, and probably house about 20 people per floor. From one window, a woman shouts in Greek at someone 3 stories down. You don't catch the words, but the tone suggests someone didn't return, a borrowed amphora. You duck into a tavern nearby where travellers and locals sip watered wine and nibble olives, while pretending not to listen to each other. A group of Roman bureaucrats mutter about shipment delays. "It's the Nile one size, always the Nile." A scholarly-looking man reads aloud from a scroll, pausing for dramatic effect. "Pliny," he announces. "Again." The crowd groans. Here's your fringe tidbit. Pliny the Elder once wrote that Egyptian priests could turn men into birds. No follow-up, just bird transformation. Must have been quite the party trick. You strike up a conversation with a mosaic artist who complains that Roman patrons only want lions, eagles, or busts of Caesar. "No imagination," she huffs. "Once I made a cat playing a harp. Didn't even get a second glance." She invites you to help with her latest piece, a floor mosaic depicting the Nile's journey. You place a single blue tile, badly. She smiles anyway. Every river starts with one drop. As twilight creeps in, you're drawn toward the harbour. The breeze tastes like salt and commerce. Ships line the docks, massive Roman vessels, sleek Egyptian boats, even a few strange ships with unfamiliar sails. Crates are being unloaded. Glass from Syria, wine from Italy, incense from Arabia. You pause beside a statue of Augustus, his stone gaze aimed dramatically at the horizon. Someone has drawn a moustache on him in charcoal. It's already half erased, as if the empire tolerated mischief only up to a point. Historians still argue whether Roman rule brought more order or more exploitation to Egypt. The grain flowed steadily to Rome. Yes, but did the people flourish or just endure? As usual, it depends on who's writing the history and who's sponsoring it. Night in Alexandria is something else. Torches flicker along colonnades, laughter spills from bathhouses. Street musicians pluck lyres, while perfumers spritz passers-by with rosewater. You buy a small cone of scented wax and pin it atop your head, as locals do. It melts slowly, releasing fragrance as you walk. It feels luxurious and mildly sticky. You find a quiet perch overlooking the harbour. Below, waves slap gently against stone. Above, the stars blink on. Same constellations, new empire. You lean back, full of olives and questions. Egypt isn't gone. It's just wearing a Roman accent now. The next morning hits you like a badly managed tax audit. Voices. So many voices. Loud, layered, relentless. You blink your way into wakefulness and realise you're in the middle of the Roman Forum, Alexandria style. It's not like the quiet temple plazas of old Egypt. No, this place crackles. Arguments flare over fruit carts. Philosophers debate under porticos. A man in a toga tries to sell you a suspiciously smooth-skinned melon that might actually be a rock. The ground beneath your sandals is paved and warm. Columns tower above you, and every wall is a billboard. Painted announcements, political graffiti, slogans, and oddly specific jokes about senators. One says, "Vote Quintus, he only steals half your olives." You drift toward the grain depot, where the shouting reaches operatic heights. A shipment's late. A bureaucrat waves a wax tablet and insists the Nile is too emotional this year. A merchant counters that it's Rome's fault for building aqueducts, like lazy snakes. The debate draws a crowd. Someone sells breadsticks mid-rant. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Egypt was Rome's grain supplier. Tons of wheat were harvested here and shipped north to feed the empire's ever-hungry citizens. And with bread came politics. The famous bread and circuses wasn't just an idea, it was a logistical reality. If Egypt's harvest failed, Rome felt it in its stomach. You walk past a queue of people, long, winding, slightly cranky, lined up outside the Anana, the government grain distribution office. This is where citizens receive their allotments. You overhear mutters about reduced rations, and someone swears last week's bread had a pebble the size of a senator's ego. A mother hushes her kids while balancing a basket of figs. A slave with tired eyes carries 3 sacks of grain in one arm and a scroll of unpaid taxes in the other. You get the sense that, despite the grandeur, daily life here still balances on the edge of exhaustion. Further on, the marketplace swells. Meat, fish, olives, fabric, dice scrolls, amulets. You watch a debate between a Greek-speaking merchant and a Latin-speaking soldier that devolves into interpretive dance and loud finger-pointing. Eventually, they both leave with bread and a handshake. Globalization. Ancient addition. A scribe sets up a pop-up desk, literally just a box and some ink, and offers to write letters for the illiterate. One man dictates a message to his mother. Another, a love poem that's not great. You try not to react as he rhymes Venus with Peter. You pause beside a beggar near the steps of a temple. He's missing one leg and wears a wooden replacement shaped like a lion paw. Found it at a theatre prop sale, he explains. Bit dramatic, but I get better tips. He offers you a seat in a story about a riot years ago between Roman settlers and Egyptian nationalists. They fought over statues, he says, but it wasn't really about statues. It never is. Historians still argue whether these tensions were widespread or isolated, but Alexandria was a boiling pot of cultures and classes, and sometimes the lid rattled. You rise and wander into the shaded heart of the Forum, where statues of emperors pose with the self-seriousness of actors at a school play. Augustus, Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, all carved in flowing togas and heroic glances. You swear one of them is smirking. Might be the light. A boy runs by chasing a ball. He crashes into a senator's aide and pretends to faint dramatically. The aide rolls his eyes and gives him a coin. Best performance all week, he mutters. Lunch approaches. The Forum shifts from shouting to chewing. You follow your nose to a thermopolium, a Roman snack bar. The cook greets you with a nod and hands you something wrapped in fig leaves. It's stuffed with cheese, herbs, and ambition. You eat. You immediately regret not ordering 2. As you chew, you overhear a conversation between 2 women sipping watered wine at a shaded bench. "I heard she married a Roman," one whispers. And now her sandals have heels. Gasp. You decide to check out the political corner of the forum, where men in togas argue with the urgency of men who have never personally milked a goat. A local elder tries to bring up river taxation. A young Roman orator responds with a passionate speech about honour, tradition, and how his hair refuses to stay curled in this humidity. No one listens. A cat naps under the podium. You sit on a step beside an old man, feeding birds and shaking his head at it all. "Rome talks," he says. "Egypt waits." He smiles, toothless and sun-warmed. "They need us. Oh, we remember that." Here's your fringe tidbit. Some grain riots were rumoured to have been intentionally started by politicians trying to weaken rivals. Bread wasn't just food, it was a weapon, and a very crummy one at that. Later, as the sun slides lower, people begin drifting home. Vendors pack up. Leftover loaves are passed to the poor. You catch the flicker of a red cape disappearing into a back alley. A senator's mistress? A secret rebel? Someone looking for better wine? You'll never know. You pass a group of actors rehearsing for an upcoming public performance. It's a comedy about a corrupt tax collector who gets turned into a goat. There's a mask with massive eyebrows. It looks disturbingly familiar. Before the forum fades entirely into dusk, a herald announces tomorrow's entertainment. Gladiator games in the arena, followed by a poetry duel and a goat race. You mentally rank them in terms of personal interest. The city quiets around you, but even in the stillness, the forum breathes. It's always moving, always talking, a swirling sea of opinions, olives and opportunism. You lean against a column, fig-stuffed and sun-warmed, and whisper to no one in particular. Rome talks, Egypt waits. You can smell the bathhouse before you see it. Not in a bad way, just dense, a warm, almost sweet cloud of oil, sweat, herbs and old gossip hangs in the air like it's part of the architecture. You turn a corner and there it is. The Thermae, a Roman bathhouse large enough to house a small army of half-naked, opinionated citizens. Outside, men lounge on benches, sandals off, robes half-draped, arguing about gladiators, grain prices, and whether the stars look different since the last eclipse. You try not to stare as one particularly hairy man trims his chest with a shell-shaped razor while quoting Virgil. You step inside, and the temperature punches you gently in the face. Steam curls around painted columns. The floor is warm. You're ushered past the apoditarium, the changing room, by a wiry attendant who looks like he hasn't smiled since Augustus was in short pants. He takes your clothes, your sandals, and your sense of dignity. In return, you get a scratchy towel and a nod toward the next chamber. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman bathhouses were social hubs. They weren't just about getting clean. They were places to network, gossip, relax, and show off your ability to withstand absurd levels of humidity without passing out. You step into the tepidarium, the warm room. Soft light filters through high windows. Water trickles from bronze spouts shaped like nymphs. Patrons recline on marble benches, while attendants rub them down with perfumed oils. You sit beside a senator-looking fellow who's having his feet massaged by a teen with spectacularly bored eyebrows. "Egyptian?" the man asks, eyeing your towel. "Sort of," you reply. He grunts. "Good reeds, terrible singers." He returns to sipping wine from a shallow bowl while muttering something about provincial tax revolts. You move on, passing into the caldarium, the hot room. It's a sauna on overdrive. The air is thick, wet, and smells of eucalyptus and ambition. A group of merchants sit sweating profusely and loudly complaining about Rome's import laws. "Why should Spanish olives be taxed higher than Syrian figs?" one bellows. "Because no one actually likes figs," another retorts, earning an outraged gasp. A young man next to you pours cold water over his head. sighs and recites 3 lines of epic poetry. It might be Homer, or just a dramatic toast, fringe tidbit of the day. Some Romans believed that steam could release demons from the skin, which means, right now, you're either detoxing or exercising your elbows, possibly both. An attendant appears with a strigil, a curved metal scraper used to remove oil, sweat and dirt. You're guided to a stone bench and slathered in olive oil mixed with crushed herbs. Then scrape. It's not painful, but it is intimate, like being debasted by a philosophical turkey. The man scrubbing you mutters softly, more to himself than you. Olives from Cyprus, soapweed from Alexandria. That itch near your ribs? Probably the gods. You nod, unsure how to respond. Afterward, you're handed a towel that smells faintly of thyme and possibly regret. You step into the frigidarium, the cold plunge pool, and immediately regret every decision that's led you here. The water is glacial, like being hugged by a sarcastic glacier. You gasp, everyone laughs. First time? A woman asks, completely unfazed. You nod, teeth chattering. Don't worry, she says. You'll get used to it, or you won't. That's Rome. Historians still argue whether bathhouses were truly egalitarian. In theory, everyone could enter. In practice, class, gender, and timing determined your access. Today, though, you're just another body among many, slick, scrubbed, and slightly disoriented. You float for a moment, letting your body cool, your mind drift. Candles flicker on the walls. Laughter echoes from deeper chambers. Someone plays a reed flute that sounds suspiciously like a duck. Or maybe you're just lightheaded. You dry off and wander into the massage room. Heated stones, rose oil. A man in a leopard print sash offers you a back rub with the solemnity of a high priest. You accept. You almost fall asleep. Later, wrapped in clean linen and sipping honeyed water, you recline near the entrance, where people gossip over bowls of spiced nuts. You hear about Marcia, one woman whispers, left her husband for a gladiator, or a poet, or both. Do they bathe together? Regularly, gasps all around. You try not to smirk. Here's a curious sight. A pair of philosophers in a heated debate over whether the steam room is a metaphor for death or birth. One insists it mirrors the womb. The other claims it's symbolic of divine confusion. Both are sweating profusely, and neither will admit they're lost. The bathhouse empties slowly as dusk settles. Torches are lit. The floors are cleaned. One final guest, a singer, hums as she towels her hair. Her song floats down the corridor. Something about love, time, and sandal straps. You exit into the cooling street, skin soft, hair damp, brain a little fuzzed from steam and stories. You feel lighter, clean, not just on the outside, but deeper. Like someone scraped off a layer of history and let you start again. You pass by the clothes rack, reclaiming your tunic and sandals. The attendant winks. You survived. Not everyone does. You nod, suddenly aware that the bathhouse wasn't just a bathhouse. It was a crucible, a place where senators, slaves, artists, and tourists could all become equally pink and pruny. You walk into the evening, muscles loose, mind open. Rome may conquer with swords, but it heals with hot water, oil, and very judgmental attendants. You wake to the sound of metal on metal, a rhythmic clang that rattles your teeth before you even open your eyes. You groggily sit up and realize you're in a dusty courtyard, surrounded by wooden dummies, sand pits, and very angry shouting. Someone hurls a net across the yard. Someone else parries it with a trident and an impressive grunt. You're in a ludus, a Roman gladiator training school, and things are intense. You shuffle sideways to avoid a swinging wooden sword and nearly collide with a man wearing a leather helmet, missing a tooth, and sweating like a terrified onion. He grins. "New recruit?" he asks. You don't get a chance to answer. A gruff voice bellows from across the courtyard. "Pair off, shields high, if you bleed, don't whine, use it to grip." A tall man strides through the dust cloud, like a war god on laundry day. That's the lanista, the trainer, part drill sergeant, part talent scout, part grumpy dad with a pointy stick. You're handed a wooden sword, a shield almost the size of your self-esteem, and very little instruction. Swing, says your opponent, a wiry Gaul with a grin and a scar that suggests bad past decisions. You swing. He dodges, taps your knee, and casually says, "You'd be dead now." Thanks. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Gladiators weren't always slaves. Some were volunteers, auctorati, who signed up for fame, food, and fortune. Others were criminals, prisoners of war, or people who owed someone powerful a big, blood-soaked favour. You're shown the basics. Forward lunge, shield bash, backward roll. You fail that one magnificently. And how to shout in a way that makes your opponent slightly nervous. Every move is exact, efficient. These men, and yes, women too, are performers as much as they are warriors. You glance toward the animal cages near the back of the yard. A lion yawns, a leopard glares. A man named Felix nervously sharpens a wooden spear while muttering, "Please not me, please not me." Fringe tidbit. Rehearsals for animal fights were a thing. Gladiators sometimes practiced with dummies, other times with sedated animals. Though sedated could mean anything from full stomachs to slightly confused. You sit down for a water break, gulping from a clay jug while a pair of retiari, net and trident fighters, debate the ethics of knee strikes. One says they're cheap. The other says everything's cheap when you're trying not to die in front of 20,000 people. The lanista walks by and gives you a nod. "Not awful," he says. "Then don't trip next time. You'll stab yourself." You spend the afternoon watching a mock battle. Wooden swords clash, shields slam. One man disarms another and drops him with a dramatic flourish. A scribe nearby takes notes, maybe scouting for an upcoming arena match. Next to you, a boy sells pastries stuffed with dates and sesame seeds. "Sugar calms nerves," he says. "Also makes blood taste sweeter." You buy two. You explore the training barracks, stone walls, shared bunks, shelves full of helmets and cleaned armour. Some gladiators have scratched tally marks into the walls. Wins, losses, maybe just days survived. A mural painted above one bunk shows a man raising his gladius as a crowd cheers. Below a message, "Valens lived." Once you meet a gladiatrix, a female fighter with arms that could bench press Jupiter. She twirls a wooden sword lazily. "They say women don't belong in the arena," she tells you. "But I've outlasted 6 men and 1 lion. The lion was nicer." You believe her instantly. Historians still argue whether female gladiators were rare novelties or more common than records suggest, but they definitely existed, and they definitely broke a few noses. Later, you're led into a dusty room with sand-covered benches. An older gladiator sharpens a blade and offers you advice. "Don't look at the crowd," he says. "They don't care who you are, only what you do." You ask if he's ever killed someone. He pauses. "Yes and no. Some die on the sand, others die before they even enter." You're not sure if that's philosophy or trauma, possibly both. Dinner is lentils, bread, olives, and heavily salted fish. The mood is relaxed but edgy. Laughter comes in short bursts, often followed by quiet. Some train by moonlight, others sit and clean their gear in silence. One gladiator sketches his dream home in the dirt. Olive trees, quiet stream. No lions. You nod approvingly. A herald enters, scroll in hand. He reads off names for tomorrow's show. 2 men stand. 1 woman grins. A 4th man slumps slightly, but says nothing. They've been chosen. You're not. Relief hits harder than you'd like to admit. That night, you sit on the edge of the sand pit, watching fireflies hover above the straw. The arena looms nearby, empty for now, but already whispering. A boy beside you, maybe 14, sharpens a blade slowly. "Do you think the gods watch?" he asks. You shrug. "Maybe. I hope they're cheering." You don't sleep much. Dreams come anyway. Crowds roaring, sand turning red, lions purring behind bars. When dawn breaks, the arena doors open, and you watch them go in. Some with fists raised, some with heads bowed. All of them warriors, whether they chose this or not. By midday, the arena smells like a bakery exploded inside a battlefield. Roasted barley, sweat, honey-glazed fruit, hot stone, and the very specific scent of old armour being polished just a little too late. The crowd hums, a rising storm of anticipation. Some perched on stone benches with wreaths in their hair, others waving bits of cloth or aggressively seasoned meat on sticks. You, miraculously, still not scheduled to be stabbed, slip out the back gate of the ludus and take a winding path towards something far more civilized. Dinner. Specifically, a dinner with Cicero. Okay, a Cicero, not the Cicero, probably. Romans reuse names like they're going out of fashion, and it's entirely possible this one's just a third cousin with good table manners and a minor poetry habit. You're led into a domus, a sprawling rectangular home with an open-air atrium where fish drift lazily in a tiled pool. A servant sprinkles flower petals onto the water while a child attempts to fish one out using a spoon. Inside, the walls are painted with vibrant scenes, nymphs frolicking, gods bestowing favours, and one suspiciously realistic depiction of a man tripping over a wine jug. You admire that one in particular. A slave takes your sandals, another hands you a damp cloth scented with myrrh. You try to look like this happens all the time, and definitely didn't surprise you. The triclinium dining room is set with 3 couches arranged around a low table. You recline awkwardly, feet sticking out at odd angles, while trying not to look like you're in yoga class. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman elite dining was all about reclining on couches, one elbow propped, one hand free to gesture dramatically or steal olives. It looked fancy. It felt like a chiropractic emergency. Your host enters, balding, draped in a toga so white it defies logic, and already chuckling. You've arrived just in time, he says. We're about to begin insulting each other politely. Dinner, it turns out, is a game of performance. The guests arrive in layers of rank, wealth, and dramatic flair. There's a senator's daughter who corrects everyone's Latin, a poet who only speaks in couplets, a retired general who mutters about those damn Gauls between bites of fig. The first course, oysters, olives, boiled eggs, and jokes about rival politicians. The poet tries to turn one into a haiku. The general snorts and downs wine like it's a duel. A servant fans the table, while another plays a flute that no one asked for. You nod, sip your watered wine, and realise someone is watching you. Across the room, a woman in a gold-hemmed stola raises an eyebrow. You're not from around here, are you? You shake your head. Thought so, she says. Your toga drapes like a badly hung curtain. You smile, slightly wounded. She smirks. Don't worry, we'll fix you by dessert. The second course arrives. Roasted game birds, lentils, spiced with cumin, honey-glazed carrots, and bread rolls shaped like seashells. A discussion breaks out over whether Jupiter prefers quail or dove. The answer, someone insists, depends on the day of the week. Fringe tidbit. Romans sometimes flavoured their wine with seawater. Adds bite, one guest tells you, offering a sip. It tastes like grape regret and poor decisions. Conversation turns to politics. Your host monologues about tax reforms, while balancing a fig on his forehead. Someone claps. Someone else rolls their eyes. You lean over to the woman beside you, she's a painter, apparently, and ask how long these dinners last. Until someone falls asleep, she says, or until someone offends someone else's patron god. She sips her wine. Either way, it's entertainment. The third course is the gustatio, the main event. Pork stuffed with dates, fish served with fig sauce, a dish made entirely of layered goose liver, and artistic frustration. You try everything. Twice. You also try not to die of fullness. One guest performs a recitation of Catullus, while another attempts to juggle 3 pears. It ends with pear sauce and applause. Historians still argue whether these elite dinners were sincere gatherings or just political theatre wrapped in pastry. Likely both. Every toast carries weight. Every seating arrangement speaks volumes. You begin to wonder if you're accidentally climbing the social ladder just by surviving dessert. Speaking of dessert, trays of honey cakes, almond wafers, pomegranate seeds, and dates rolled in sesame parade into the room. Someone lets loose a small bird from a decorative cage, and it flies a loop around the triclinium before pooping on the general. Good omen, someone deadpans. Everyone nods. The final act of the evening? Philosophy. Guests recline deeper into their couches, wine flowing freely now, and the conversation softens. What is the purpose of the soul, someone muses. To host better dinner parties, someone else replies. A man quotes Seneca. A woman counters with Sappho. You offer a modest observation about onions, and somehow it becomes a metaphor for human emotion. The painter claps. The host leans in. This, he says, is Rome. Not the swords, not the statues. This. Bread, wine, laughter, and occasional metaphysical spirals. Outside, the night deepens. The atrium glows with lamplight. Guests begin to depart, wobbling gently, hiccuping poetry. A servant returns your sandals. The host clasps your shoulder. Come again, he says. Bring gossip next time. You step into the street, belly full, head foggy, heart strangely buoyant. Somewhere down the block, you hear singing, drunken, off-key but heartfelt. Rome celebrates, Rome digests, and you? You walk slowly beneath the stars, thinking of figs, souls, and the way laughter clings to a candlelit ceiling long after the plates are cleared. The morning sun slices across cobblestones like a lazy blade, and the air smells of bread, ash, and something sweetly sinister. You squint, stretch, and find yourself in a town of narrow streets, colourful frescoes, and suspiciously cheerful dogs. Pompeii. Yes, that Pompeii. But don't panic, we're not there for that day. Not yet. Today is just a Tuesday, which, in ancient Roman terms, means slightly chaotic and full of bread. You follow the crowd through the city gate and into the bustle. Stone-paved streets curve and dip around shops and homes, everything organised with a strange, organic rhythm that only makes sense if you've lived here long enough to know which streets flood and which ones attract roaming flute players. People greet each other with loud voices and louder hands. Women balance baskets of figs while yelling at dogs. Children chase chickens. A merchant hawks bronze hairpins while simultaneously arguing with his own brother about debt. It's vibrant, ridiculous, and very much alive. You pass a baker's shop. The oven is roaring. A worker pulls out round loaves stamped with the bakery's emblem, almost like a business card you can eat. A boy offers you one fresh from the tray. You bite. It's crunchy on the outside, soft in the centre, and slightly smoky. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Pompeii's bakeries were state-of-the-art. They had mills powered by donkeys, massive ovens, and even delivery systems. And yes, archaeologists found carbonised loaves after the eruption, some still bearing stamps with the owner's name. Imagine your toast lasting 2,000 years, and still being judged for its crust. Down the street, a woman paints graffiti on a wall in red pigment. Lucius loves Petronia, it says. Then she adds, but Petronia prefers wine. A mood. You enter the Thermopolium, a Roman fast food joint, with counters embedded with clay jars of hot food. Chickpea stew, spiced sausage, lentils with leeks. A customer argues with the owner over whether the stew tastes different today. You added fennel, didn't you? He accuses. The owner shrugs and pours more. The stew is in fact delicious and slightly fennel forward. You take your bowl and wander into the forum, where politicians are arguing about something no one is paying attention to. A vendor sells miniature Mercury figurines for business luck. Another offers volcano charms. You blink. Volcano? You ask. Just a joke, the vendor says, suddenly avoiding eye contact. Mount Vesuvius looms in the distance, a purple shadow against the sky. Quiet. Peaceful. You try not to look at it too long. In a side alley, you stumble into a garden courtyard painted with lush frescoes. Peacocks, pomegranates, golden urns. The owner, a silk-robed woman with a voice like honeyed vinegar, catches you admiring the wall. "Don't steal the paint with your eyes," she quips. "Then you hungry?" Before you can answer, she offers fruit, cheese, and cold-spiced wine. She talks of gossip, marriage contracts, and her neighbour's dog, which she claims is possessed. Barks at the moon, barks at statues, once barked at his own tail for 3 hours. You excuse yourself before you're adopted. Further on, you peek into a small shrine. A family kneels before painted household gods, the Lares and Penates, praying for good harvests and protection from gossip. You catch the words ash and smoke, whispered quickly. The air suddenly feels still. Fringe tidbit, Pompeians occasionally reported tremors, sulphur smells, and strange weather patterns. Some thought it was divine warning, others blamed cheap incense. Historians still argue whether people feared the volcano or simply accepted it as part of life, like taxes or seagulls. You pass a public fountain where teenagers dare each other to drink from the lion-headed spout. One kid splashes water on a friend and is immediately chased down the street to dramatic screams and exaggerated curses. Around the corner, you find the brothel. It's not subtle, painted signs, suggestive frescoes, and rooms with beds carved into the stone. Above each door, images, menus basically, depicting services in no uncertain terms. You duck in, purely for educational purposes, and meet a woman reclining on a cushion, painting her toenails with crushed berries. "You lost?" she asks, not looking up. "Just wondering," you reply. She grins. "Aren't we all?" You thank her and leave with your dignity only mildly crumpled. Back on the main street, a parade approaches. Musicians lead with flutes and drums. Dancers follow, wearing laurel crowns and shaking ribbons. At the centre, a statue of Bacchus, god of wine and madness, is carried on a wooden platform. Grapes dangle from his carved fingers. Wine sloshes in ceremonial bowls. Someone hands you a cup. You drink. It's cold, sweet, and wildly alcoholic. A poet climbs onto a bench and shouts a sonnet about wine, love, and regrettable tattoos. You nod. Been there. Later you stop at the public baths. Inside, mosaic floors depict sea creatures, and the air smells of mint and damp towels. Men chat about the gladiator match tomorrow. One claims he saw a lion yawn mid-battle last week. Terrifying, he insists, like death with dental hygiene. You step into the open again, just as the sun begins to dip behind Vesuvius. The shadows stretch long. You pause by the city wall. The breeze carries the scent of pine, sulphur, and fresh bread. Children laugh somewhere in the distance. Lovers argue under a fig tree. A woman leans from a window and calls for her cat. Pompeii breathes. You sit on a low stone wall and watch as the lights flicker on. Lamps glowing like little fireflies across balconies and courtyards. You know what's coming. Not today, but someday. And yet right now, Pompeii is utterly, defiantly alive. It doesn't know it's a ruin in waiting. It just knows how to live. The next day begins with shouting. Not angry shouting, more the frantic, half-panicked, breakfast-in-hair kind of shouting you only hear around school children, being dragged to lessons against their will. You follow the noise through narrow streets, past bakeries just firing up their morning loaves, until you reach a villa with chalky white columns and a loud courtyard full of sandals, wax tablets, and anxiety. Congratulations. You've arrived at a Roman school. You ease in beside a group of boys sitting cross-legged on benches, most of them pretending not to exist. Their tunics are crumpled, their hair half-combed, and one of them is hiding a lizard in his sleeve, like it's a pocket calculator. At the front of the room stands the Ludi Magister, a man whose facial expression suggests he once smiled in 12 BCE and instantly regretted it. He wields a wooden pointer and a stare that can peel the paint off a fresco. "Repetite," he demands. The boys chant in unison, "Amo, amas, amat." The Latin verb to love, droned with all the enthusiasm of a bad nap. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Roman boys, especially those from upper or aspiring classes, were expected to study reading, writing, rhetoric, and arithmetic. Education was rigorous and memorization heavy, and if you weren't prepared, the consequences could sting. Literally, corporal punishment was a regular teaching tool. You're handed a wax tablet, essentially the Roman iPad, but made of wood and beeswax, and a stylus. You try to write your name, but the wax keeps cracking. The boy next to you leans over and whispers, "Don't press like a barbarian." Thanks, Marcus. Real helpful. Today's lesson is a classic. Copying maxims. The teacher dictates phrases like, "Fortune favours the brave," and "A boy should fear his master more than Mars." You blink. That escalated quickly. Marcus draws a tiny centaur in his wax and tries to pass it off as punctuation. In the corner, two older students practice declamation, formal speech-making. One argues that a son should be allowed to sue his father for excessive broccoli. The other counters that honour requires suffering vegetables. It's hard to tell if they're practicing rhetoric or real trauma. Fringe tidbit. Some Roman teachers wrote entire textbooks made of fictional legal cases, dramas involving runaway slaves, cursed jewellery, and who should inherit the amphora when a man dies choking on lentils. Early mock trial meets soap opera. After a brutal hour of copying and reciting, the class breaks for recess. Freedom. The boys explode into the street like corks from amphorae. You follow as they race toward an open square near the baths. Games begin immediately. Knucklebones, tag, hide and seek behind statues, and a bizarre contest where they try to balance on one foot while quoting Virgil. You're roped into a game involving hoops and sticks, which ends with a minor scrape, a lot of yelling, and one kid swearing revenge in flawless dactylic hexameter. A girl wanders by from a nearby private tutoring session. She watches the chaos, unimpressed, and mutters, "Boys." She's carrying a scroll longer than your entire torso and sipping wine from a tiny silver cup. Her tutor waves, clearly relieved for the break. Historians still argue whether girls were educated formally or informally. While elite families sometimes hired tutors for their daughters, much of female education focused on domestic skills, estate management, and surviving marriage negotiations. Still, exceptions abounded, especially in intellectual hubs like Alexandria. Back in class, it's grammar time. The teacher holds up a text by Cicero and begins diagramming sentences on a chalked tablet. He spends 15 minutes explaining a single line. Marcus falls asleep with his eyes open. You feel your soul leave your body briefly and hover above the chalk dust. To revive morale, the Magister launches into a story from mythology, an educational tactic, and possibly a desperate cry for attention. Today's tale: the time a satyr tried to challenge Apollo to a music contest and got skinned for his trouble. Lesson: don't outplay a god unless you're into very painful exfoliation. Then comes math, tables, geometry, word problems like, if Lucius has 12 amphorae of wine and drinks 3 every 2 days, how long until the senator's party runs dry and everyone cries? The correct answer is too soon. A student gets caught whispering answers. He's sentenced to clean the teacher's sandals. The rest of the class nods solemnly. The sandals are legendary. Lunchtime arrives like a minor miracle. The boys spill back into the square, unwrapping bundles of bread, cheese, dates and complaints. Marcus trades a fig for half your roll. Fair. You sit together in the sun, chewing silently. Do you think real life is like this forever? He asks. You raise an eyebrow. I mean, after school, is it all just speeches and sandals? You think for a moment. And figs, he nods. Could be worse. After lunch, the class returns to review moral philosophy. Today's quote, "Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet." Marcus whispers, "Unless the fruit is fermented, then it's just weird." The teacher assigns a written response. Your stylus squeaks as you scribble a line about figs teaching patience. The teacher reads it, pauses, then hands you a honey cake. It's unclear whether you passed the assignment or he just liked the snack metaphor. As the lesson ends, students gather their things and begin to wander off. A few boys drag their feet. One lingers by the door, carving a heart into the wood frame. You catch a glimpse of the name, Petronia. Back outside, the streets glow golden in the late afternoon. Smoke curls from chimneys, children laugh. A lizard finally escapes from someone's sleeve and runs under a cart. You pass the school. Building again, quieter now. A faint voice echoes inside, someone practicing a speech about honour, victory, and grapes. You smile. Education in Rome wasn't gentle, but it was unforgettable, especially if your wax tablet had a centaur on it. By evening, the streets quiet a little, but never fully. Rome doesn't sleep so much as it murmurs in its sleep, tossing and turning beneath the weight of its own rituals. You pass through a neighbourhood lit with oil lamps and the occasional lantern hung from a doorway, and you notice something odd. Every home, every shop, every nook has a small shrine tucked into it somewhere, on a shelf, by the door, even wedged awkwardly above a wine rack. Welcome to the world of household gods. A family kneels around a lararium, their humble household shrine. Painted on the wall are two dancing figures, guardians called the lares. A small bowl of fruit sits beneath them. Incense curls upward in lazy spirals. A child holds a small loaf of bread and breaks off a corner to place in front of the gods. Offerings, whispers the father, to thank them for safety, for luck, for keeping the mice out. You nod respectfully at the gods. Can't be too careful with divine pest control. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Most Roman homes, regardless of wealth, maintained a shrine to household deities. The lares and penates were central to family life, protectors of the hearth, the pantry, and the people inside. As you wander further, you notice more shrines, some elaborate with gilded figurines and candles, others a little more than a painted eye and a chipped bowl. Yet each feels alive, watched over, attended to. You pass a merchant's shop, just as he finishes whispering to a small statue before locking up. "Don't let thieves take the good amphorae," he mutters, "just the chipped ones." You smile. But things get even weirder. A group of young men gathers at the mouth of an alley, cloaks wrapped tight, their conversation hushed. You linger close enough to catch a name whispered with reverence. Mithras. They glance around, then disappear through a narrow doorway. Curiosity flares. You follow, at a distance, and descend a stone stairwell into something that feels less like a temple and more like a secret club. The air grows cooler. Torches flicker along damp stone walls. You're inside a Mithraeum, a sanctuary dedicated to Mithras, a mysterious, bull-slaying god whose worship spread quietly across the Roman world. At the front of the room stands a carved relief. Mithras, plunging a dagger into a bull's neck, surrounded by zodiac symbols and animals that may or may not be making judgmental eye contact. A man leads a chant. It's rhythmic, strange, almost hypnotic. Wine is poured. A loaf is broken. A blindfold is passed around. You suddenly wonder if you've wandered into a secret religion or a particularly dramatic birthday party. Here's your fringe tidbit. Mithraism was wildly popular among Roman soldiers and officials, but we still don't fully understand it. Historians debate whether it was influenced by Persian beliefs, if it involved actual bull sacrifice, or if it was just Rome's answer to Guy's Night with capes. You ease back out of the chamber before someone asks you to swear an oath or wrestle a symbolic wolf. Back above ground, the street feels brighter somehow, as if relieved you're back in the realm of slightly more understandable gods. At a street corner, you come across a vendor selling tiny charms, phallus-shaped amulets, bronze fists, evil eye medallions, and carved teeth. He waves one at you. For protection, he says, from curses, bad dreams, jealous neighbours, and most mothers-in-law. You buy one shaped like a fist with 2 fingers extended. He assures you it wards off the malocchio, the evil eye. Also, it makes a decent paperweight. A group of women pass by singing a hymn to Bonadea, the good goddess. They carry flowers and cups of spiced milk. One stops to give you a rose petal and says, "She hears prayers better if you whisper through linen." You file that away under highly specific divine customer service tips. Your path leads you to a temple plaza where torches flicker along tall columns. People wander in and out, placing offerings or kneeling briefly before altars. At the far end stands a statue of Jupiter, king of gods, arm raised as if scolding thunder into obedience. A priest adjusts the hem of his robe and lights a bundle of laurel leaves. Smoke rises. Someone mutters a wish for travel safety. Another asks for rain. A third simply places a coin and walks away, silent. Historians still argue whether Romans genuinely believed in their gods or simply used religion as a civic tool, a kind of divine insurance policy. But tonight you see faith in every whisper, every flickering flame, every loaf left on a windowsill for the layers. As the night deepens, you pass a quiet home. Through an open window, a man kneels before a candlelit shrine. He presses a ring to his lips, then lays it beside a statue of Venus. His eyes shine. Maybe it's love, maybe it's loss. Either way, the gods are listening. You find a quiet corner beneath a tree and sit, clutching your charm. The stars glimmer like scattered bone dice. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows prematurely and is shouted at by at least 4 neighbours. Rome sleeps now, more or less. But its gods, they're wide awake. Morning comes not with birdsong, but with the creak of wagons and the snap of leather straps being tightened over armour. You blink away sleep to the rhythmic clank of hobnailed sandals marching across packed dirt. This is not the Rome of wine poets and opinionated bakers. This is the Rome of the frontier. You're in Britannia now. Yes, that Britannia. Misty, cold, probably raining in 5 minutes, and just far enough from Rome to make even the gods nervous. You're surrounded by Roman legionaries, all layered in cloaks, iron gear, and a general aura of exhausted professionalism. Their camp sprawls across the moor like a stubborn scab. Tents lined in strict rows, smoke curling from cook fires, sentries already grumbling about night watch. Welcome to life at a Roman castrum, a frontier military outpost. A centurion shouts at a soldier for polishing his armour, like it's going to a poetry contest. Another complains about mud in his sandals, which are frozen solid. Someone sneezes dramatically. A donkey looks offended. You're handed a helmet. You hold it awkwardly. "Put it on," says a voice behind you, gruff but amused. It belongs to a veteran with 3 scars, 2 teeth, and 1 eyebrow. You'll blend in better. Barbarians don't bother with people who look like they're already losing. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Rome's borders, especially in Britannia, Germania, and parts of the Danube, were manned by tens of thousands of legionaries. Life wasn't glamorous. It was mud, marching, and very little marble. Breakfast is a ladle of barley porridge and a lecture on spear maintenance. You eat while sitting on a crate full of javelin heads. 2 soldiers beside you play a dice game with worn bone cubes, cursing creatively in at least 3 languages. A young recruit asks you where you're from. You mumble, Alexandria, and he whistles. Heard the bathhouses there don't smell like goats? You nod, diplomatically avoiding comment on the current goat-based ambience. Drills begin. You watch as rows of soldiers march in perfect formation, pivot, throw javelins at straw dummies, then march some more. The centurion paces like a hawk who's lost his favourite snack. Tighter ranks! You want the Celts to slip through and braid your tunics? Your fingers go numb from the cold. A soldier named Gaius teaches you how to line your boots with wool and lie about having trench foot to get out of latrine duty. Fringe tidbit. Some legionaries developed elaborate, mostly fake injuries to escape combat or labour duty. There are actual reports of soldiers stuffing their sandals with animal fat to fake swelling. Ancient malingering, an honoured tradition. In the armoury, you help an old armourer polish shields, while he mutters about the good old days of clean sandals and wine that didn't taste like wet wood. He shows you a sword that once belonged to a general who thought he was Jupiter. It's reincarnated. Didn't help, the armourer shrugs. Still got poked in the spleen. You head out on a patrol through the nearby village. Roman roads stretch ahead in unnervingly straight lines, cutting through muddy hills. Like Rome itself is trying to impose geometry on nature. You pass villagers, locals in thick wool cloaks, watching with careful eyes. Some nod, others scowl. A child throws a turnip at your helmet. It bounces off with a dull thud. The soldier beside you claps. You've been initiated. Back at the fort, repairs are underway. A wall section collapsed during last week's storm. Soldiers haul stone blocks, mix mortar, and occasionally insult each other in iambic pentameter. One guy insists he saw a druid curse the scaffolding. It hissed, he claims. Historians still argue whether local tribes truly respected Roman engineering or just tolerated it until they got bored and burned it down. Either way, the forts remained, markers of power, permanence, and the occasional goat theft. At lunch, you sit in the mess tent. Cold pork, hard bread, lentils. Someone passes around fermented cabbage. You politely pretend to eat it. Morale is weirdly high. A bard, yes, apparently, there's a fort bard, stands on a barrel and sings a rude song about Hadrian's Wall being held up by prayer and wishful thinking. Everyone cheers. The centurion walks by, scowls, then throws the bard a coin. The afternoon brings training in fort protocol. Horn signals, watch rotations, what to do if a bear wanders into the kitchen. Answer, scream, then negotiate. You're assigned to shadow the lookout tower. From the top you see everything. The moors stretch like endless waves of grey-green velvet. Mist curls along the ground. Far off, figures move. Hunters, scouts, spirits. No one knows. Everyone pretends not to care. See that? Says a soldier beside you, pointing. That's not Rome. That's what's waiting. You shiver. Later, back on the ground, a storm rolls in. Rain lashes the camp. Fires hiss. Soldiers retreat to their tents, muttering about wet tunics and how the gods clearly hate Britannia. You sit under a canvas awning with a group of veterans, sipping lukewarm wine and listening to stories. One fought in Gaul, another in Syria. One claims he once met a sphinx, but admits he was very drunk. They talk about home, real or imagined, about retirement dreams, goat farms, taverns, becoming priests. One man just wants a chair that doesn't wobble. Night falls fast here. The fort glows with torchlight. Rain continues. Somewhere someone sings softly in Latin, a lullaby meant for children, but sung now for homesick soldiers, wrapped in damp cloaks. You lie on a pile of cloaks, staring at the tent ceiling, listening to the wind. Rome feels very far away, but here, in the mud and mist, it still breathes, through discipline, firelight, and a shared loaf of slightly mouldy bread. You close your eyes and dream of warmer skies. It happens slowly. A shudder in the ground. A rumour that spreads like spilled wine. A letter that doesn't arrive. You're back in Rome, or what used to feel like Rome, and something is off. The streets still bustle, merchants still shout, children still chase one another between carts and columns, but there's a tension in the air, like the city is holding its breath, or maybe choking on its own history. You sit on the steps of a bathhouse, watching a pigeon try to steal a fig from an unattended basket. It succeeds. The basket owner doesn't even notice. He's too busy reading a notice nailed to a post, a tax increase, or a military draft, or maybe both. The writing is smeared. The worry isn't. You wander the forum. Once a place of laughter, arguments, and fig-stained political drama, it now feels quieter. Not silent, but wary. Vendors sell less. Shoppers linger shorter. Someone plays a lyre with half-hearted effort. The tune keeps slipping into a minor key. You pass the temple of Jupiter. The flame is lit. The priest is absent. The guard at the entrance is missing a sandal and a little bit of hope. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The fall of the Roman Empire wasn't a single explosion, but a slow unravelling. A tangle of invasions, inflation, civil wars, weakened leadership, and a growing sense that Rome wasn't forever after all. At the market, coins change hands sluggishly. The man next to you bites into one, frowns and mutters, "Bronze core," plated in lies. You nod sympathetically. Inflation's rough when even your money is pretending to be something it's not. Down a narrow alley, someone has painted a mural of Rome as a woman, crowned, crumbling, eyes closed. Someone else has crossed out the crown and drawn a bucket on her head. Art imitates confusion. You enter a domus once owned by a minor senator. Dust coats the mosaics. Ivy creeps in through the atrium. A lone servant sweeps without urgency. "They fled last week," she says, not looking up. "Headed east. Said the barbarians were coming." You ask who, she shrugs. "Different ones every year." You walk the Via Sacra, Rome's sacred road. It used to echo with triumphal parades. Legions returning, elephants trumpeting, captives marched in shame. Today, it smells like boiled cabbage and disappointment. At a corner fountain, a boy tosses in a coin and wishes for a day without news. You relate deeply. Fringe tidbit. Some citizens began burying family heirlooms around this time. Not out of superstition, but fear. We know this because archaeologists keep finding them. Spoons, rings, bits of love and legacy wrapped in cloth and panic. You head toward the Colosseum. The stone still stands proud, but the steps are cracked, the marble chipped. Pigeons roost in the upper tiers like tiny winged senators judging everyone. Inside, a few men spar listlessly, gladiators without a crowd. One wears half his armour. The other fights in sandals. They stop mid-match and complain about unpaid wages. A new emperor's name is etched on a placard by the gate. Half the letters are scratched out. You don't ask why. You pass the old Senate building. Doors bolted, windows dusty. A man nearby grumbles. They vote in whispers now. Not enough courage left to shout. Historians still argue whether Rome's fall was inevitable. Some blame the economy. Others blame overexpansion. Some just say it was tired. Maybe all empires burn out. Or maybe they drift apart until no one's holding the pieces anymore. You wander to the outskirts of the city. The roads here are cracked, and the villas have more broken statues than guests. A woman weeds her crumbling garden with fierce purpose. You offer to help. She declines. "I don't need saving," she says, "just sun." She pauses, then adds, "and maybe fewer taxes." You laugh together. It feels good. Then come the fires, not citywide, not yet. Just pockets, a bakery, a grain store. The smell of smoke joins the scent of fear. People run, but not in full panic. It's more like they were already packed. Like the fire just gave them an excuse to go. You follow a group headed for the ports. Wagons squeak. Chickens cluck nervously. One man carries only a statue of Mars wrapped in a cloak. Another carries 3 loaves of bread and nothing else. The ships are crowded. Sailors shout. The air tastes of salt and indecision. You watch from a distance as they sail, not fleeing, just choosing something else. Back in the city, the sky glows orange in places, but life stubbornly clings on. A child plays with a spinning top on the temple steps. A poet scribbles on a wall. Even ashes sing. A baker opens his stall and announces, 2 for 1 figs, because why not? You sit beneath a crumbling archway, dusk curling around you, like a closing chapter. Rome is still here, just different, weary, worn, but here, for now. The crack of a sail, the rush of cold spray, the hiss of wind over salt-slicked wood. You are no longer in Rome. You're on a longboat, its dragon prow slicing through misty waters, shields lining the rails like a row of teeth, sails billowing with grim determination. The oars cut the sea in perfect rhythm. Your hands grip the edge of the boat, and the breeze slaps your face like an enthusiastic goat. Welcome to Scandinavia. The Viking age has arrived. The coastline ahead is jagged and wild. Pines press against the sky. The clouds hang low, brooding like forgotten gods. On deck, a crew of leather-clad, broad-shouldered warriors checks their axes with the same care you'd use to inspect a pie crust. Someone hands you a piece of dried fish. It tastes like regret, with a hint of moss. You smile anyway. The man beside you grunts. First raid, he asks. You nod. Hope you brought warm socks. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Vikings weren't just raiders. They were also traders, settlers, craftsmen, and explorers. But today? Yeah, today's more of a raiding day. The boat skims into a narrow fjord, where a village perches at the water's edge. Children chase goats. Smoke curls from turf-roofed homes. The longhouse sits at the centre, like a sleeping bear made of timber and thatch. As the ship slides into the dock, everyone disembarks with well-practiced ease. No trumpets, no fanfare, just booted feet and the creak of ropes. You follow them onto land, boots sinking slightly into wet moss. You're in Viking territory now, and it smells like wood smoke, fish oil and wet fur. The longhouse welcomes you with flickering torchlight and a wave of heat. Inside, thick wooden beams, woven tapestries, animal hides, and benches that look like they were carved by someone angry at trees. A woman with silver blonde hair and a fox fur cloak ushers you to the fire. Sit, warm your feet. Try not to look soft. You sit. She hands you a horn of mead. You drink. It's sweet, thick, and carries the subtle punch of a thunder god's elbow. A man next to you is carving a chess piece from bone. He offers you one. It's a bear with antlers. You don't ask. Fringe tidbit. Some Viking game pieces have been found carved from walrus ivory and whalebone. Scholars think certain pieces symbolised real figures, chiefs, warriors, or even gods, or maybe just very intense goats. A skald, a Viking poet, stands near the hearth and begins to chant. His voice is low, rough, and rises like smoke. He tells the tale of Odin disguising himself as a beggar to steal mead from a giant. Half the room joins in on key verses, the other half just drinks. You catch bits of the story between gulps, trickery, ravens, a suspiciously sentient cauldron. By the end, someone's crying, possibly from joy, possibly from the mead. Outside, the air turns icy. A snow flurry drifts in, soft and silent. You step out to find the village wrapped in silver. Torches glow through the flakes. A woman leads goats into a shed. A boy throws snow at his brother, misses, and hits a cow. The cow does not forgive. You climb a hill overlooking the fjord. Below, more longboats bob in their moorings. The sea darkens with approaching clouds. Your breath fogs the air. Somewhere far off, a horn sounds, long, mournful, proud. A man joins you at the crest. He's older, with a beard like braided smoke, and a scar that runs from ear to chin. He stares at the water. I fought the Franks once, he says. Took a spear to the thigh. Still can't sit right in spring. You nod, unsure what to say. We go east next, he continues. Across the rivers, find new trade or new trouble. He glances at you. You coming? You blink. Maybe, he grins, then sharpens something. Back in the village, you join others stacking firewood. The rhythm of work is steady, honest. Everyone pulls their weight, women, children, warriors alike. No job is too small when winter watches your doorstep. A girl hands you a bundle of dried herbs. For warmth, she says, also smells nicer than Bjorn. You don't ask who Bjorn is. You assume you'll know by scent. Historians still argue whether Vikings had a concept of home in the way other cultures did. Their mobility, seafaring life, and seasonal raids make the answer slippery. But here, with snow on the rooftops and laughter around the fire, you feel it, a place worth returning to. Later that night, you're invited to a private corner of the longhouse. A small circle gathers around a storyteller who doesn't chant but whispers. She speaks of the Norns, the weavers of fate, who stitch each life's thread into a tapestry too vast to see. One thread snaps, she says, and the world turns. You think of Rome, you think of grain riots, you think of coins that taste like lies and children spinning tops in the ashes. Then you look around, at the firelit faces, the braided hair, the quiet strength, and you realise you've stepped into another world. Not one that's crumbling, one that's rising, with boots and axes and dreams sewn into sailcloth. You pull your cloak tighter, sip what's left of your mead, and let the snow fall around you. Tomorrow you sail again. Morning breaks with the sound of someone snoring into a drinking horn. You roll over on your bed of straw and furs, eyes still gritty from the firelight, and mead, and realise two things. Your boots are missing, and someone is loudly singing about fish guts outside. Welcome to day 2 in Viking country. You eventually locate your boots, stuffed under a sleeping pig, of course, and stumble outside. The air is crisp, the snow has crusted into an uneven sheen across the rooftops, and a seagull is giving you side-eye from a fence post. A horn sounds from the centre of the village. No, not a battle horn, a gathering horn. You follow the noise to the longhouse, now transformed into a hall of mead and boasts. Benches are lined with fur-covered warriors. Women sharpen knives while rocking babies. A dog snores under the central table. Someone already has an axe in one hand and a bowl of porridge in the other. Efficiency. At the front stands a tall man with a braided beard, gold armband, and a grin that says he's either about to lead a raid or challenge someone to a drinking contest. This is the Jarl, the local chieftain. He raises his hands. Silence falls. Even the pig under the table stops chewing. Who here has a story, he calls. And just like that, it begins. The Hall of Boasts. One by one, villagers step forward to share their deeds, real or wildly exaggerated. A woman claims she caught a bear in a fish trap. A boy insists he once threw a spear so high it knocked a star loose. The crowd cheers each tale, jeers when appropriate, and drinks after every single boast. It's less about truth and more about conviction. You're nudged forward, you panic. You tell the story of the time you escaped a flooded Nile village on a raft made of pottery lids and half a goat. There's a long pause, then someone bangs a shield and yells, "Worthy!" Here's your mainstream historical fact. Boasting was more than entertainment. It was a form of social currency. In Norse culture, honour wasn't just earned. It was spoken aloud, witnessed, and remembered. Your reputation was your legacy. After the stories, it's time for games. Someone hands you a throwing axe. The target is a tree stump painted with a face. You miss. Twice. The third time, it bounces back and nearly clips the Jarl's boot. He laughs so hard he nearly chokes on his porridge. "Ah, you fight like a poet," he chuckles, "but at least you don't cry like one." You watch others with more skill, axe throwing, arm wrestling, and one very confusing game that involves catching a fish with your mouth while standing on one leg and singing about snow. Then come the riddles. A woman with iron grey hair stands in the centre and issues challenges. What walks on 4 legs in winter, 3 in the sun, and 5 in the mead hall? The answer turns out to be Thorgil after 4 drinks, fringe tidbit. Vikings loved wordplay. Riddles, metaphors called kennings, and clever insults were considered marks of intelligence. A sword might be called a wound ice and a ship sea steed. Everything had a poetic alias, sometimes confusing, always cool. You sit beside a young shield maiden polishing her blade. Her arm is tattooed with swirling knotwork, and she's eating smoked herring like it owes her money. You fight, she asks. Sometimes, you say, which is generous. She nods. Good, we're short 1 rower. You're beginning to suspect this is less an invitation and more a threat. She teaches you how to chant a rowing song. Short, repetitive, impossible to forget. The rhythm is infectious. It sticks in your head like sap on bark. Row, strike, live, row, strike, live. Outside, snow begins to fall again. Flakes drift like ash from a very polite volcano. Children build a snow god. Round belly, stick sword, deer skull helmet. They name him Snorri the Mostly Reasonable. The mead flows again by mid-afternoon. You join a group around the hearth, where the skald returns to recite a saga about Thor losing his hammer and disguising himself as a bride to get it back. The tale is hilarious, chaotic, and surprisingly touching. Everyone knows the lines. They chant them with gusto, like a choir raised on battle cries and fermented honey. Then someone burps the last verse, loudly. It's met with applause. As the light fades, the Jarl rises again. This hall remembers, he says, our stories, our storms, our friends. He raises his horn. May your axe be sharp, your shield strong, and your enemies confused. Everyone drinks, even the pig. Later, full of laughter and roasted boar, you step out into the snow. The stars wheel above, sharper here somehow. You see the northern lights for the first time, green and purple ribbons, dancing like shy ghosts across the heavens. A woman beside you whispers, "That's the Bifrost, the bridge between worlds." You nod. Whether it is or not doesn't matter. Tonight, the sky's a story. Historians still argue whether the Norse oral tradition preserved history or myth. But really, what's the difference when both are carved into memory with equal reverence? Back inside, the fire roars. The Jarl snores. The pig dreams of boar glory. And you sit in the warmest corner of the hall, head heavy with mead, pockets full of half-finished carvings, and a snow-wet song still buzzing in your ears. This world isn't built on marble. It's built on smoke, laughter, and stories that echo through the timber bones of the hall. And tonight, you're part of the echo. You awaken to an intense scraping noise. Not a sword, not a spear, toothpicks. Yes, 2 Viking men are sitting cross-legged by the hearth, each carefully grooming their teeth with sharpened wooden slivers, occasionally pausing to inspect them against the light like artisanal dental critics. One even adjusts his beard afterward with the precision of a sculptor fine-tuning marble. Welcome to Viking Hygiene Hour. You sit up, still wrapped in a fur cloak that smells faintly of smoked fish and campfire. A bowl of water is placed in front of you. It's cold with a sprig of juniper floating lazily on the surface. A girl hands you a rag and says, "You smell like a soggy shield." Fair. You wash your face and join the others outside, where the sun is slicing through the clouds with surprising enthusiasm. The snow has mostly melted, revealing brown, thawing earth, tree roots, and a very determined goat chewing on someone's helmet strap. You're ushered toward the communal wash area, where a few warriors are already scrubbing their arms, feet and, yes, ears. Soap made from animal fat and ash sits in wooden bowls. It smells earthy, slightly spicy, and very committed. One man scrubs his beard while humming. Another uses a bronze grooming pick to clean his nails. Someone behind you is flossing with horsehair. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Vikings were remarkably hygienic for their time. Archaeological finds include combs, tweezers, ear spoons, and toothpicks, all made from bone, antler, or metal. They bathed weekly, far more often than many of their European contemporaries, earning them a mixed reputation of uncivilized warriors who somehow smell great. You try the soap. It lathers. Barely. The man beside you chuckles. You look like someone who fought a troll and lost. Only emotionally, you reply. He nods, as if that makes perfect sense. After cleaning up, you're invited to the shrine area behind the longhouse, a sacred space of stones, carved idols, and whispered prayers. The air here feels different. Still, even the birds seem to keep their beaks shut. At the centre stands a statue of Thor, massive, wide-eyed and holding his hammer like it's about to lecture you. Offerings lie at his feet, goat bones, coins, feathers, and a very old wheel of cheese. One man bows and mutters something in Old Norse, another sprinkles mead on the ground. A priestess with iron bangles on both arms approaches. You can ask the gods for strength, she says, but if you forget to brush your teeth, they won't listen. You suppress a smile. She isn't joking. She hands you a piece of birch bark etched with runes. You hold it up to the sun and see the marks more clearly. Symbols for protection, health, and possibly avoiding public embarrassment. Fringe tidbits. Viking runes weren't just writing. They were symbols believed to hold magical power. People carved them into weapons, combs, teeth, and even lintels above doorways. And yes, some messages were just as petty as modern graffiti. One rune found on a comb reads, "I belong to Sigrid. Don't touch." You walk with a young woman named Asa, who sharpens her axe while talking casually about spirits in the trees. They're not gods, she explains, just very nosy. She shows you her amulet, a small iron Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, worn around her neck. For strength, she says, and charm. You never know which you'll need more. You're led next to a small wooden building, set apart from the others. It's filled with healing herbs, dried roots, and jars labelled in runic shorthand. A healer inside crushes herbs with a stone and mutters to herself. "Toothache," she says, gesturing at a boy holding his jaw like it's about to fall off. She rubs a black paste on his gums. He squeals. "Good sign," she grins. You ask what's in it. Birch sap, ground bone, and the tears of someone who stepped on a goat horn barefoot. You decide not to press further. Back in the longhouse, warriors are re-braiding their hair with pieces of coloured wool. One man asks for help, tying a knot just behind his ear. "Red means I saw blood last raid," he explains. "Blue means I sang about it afterward." You get a green thread. "Green's for the one who watches," someone says, "the one who sees the story." You tie it anyway. Later, you witness a small naming ritual for a baby born the previous week. The mother places the child on her father's lap, and the family sings. A carved pendant is pressed into the infant's palm. The name whispered is Leifer. "May he live long enough to earn a new name," the Jarl says. Historians still argue whether these rituals were strictly religious or deeply familial. Likely both. For Vikings, identity was a fluid thing. Earned, changed, marked by deeds, stories, even scars. As evening falls, the Skald returns with a story about Loki tricking the gods into building a wall in exchange for a horse. The punchline is strangely inappropriate and involves a foal with 8 legs. Everyone laughs. You sit by the fire, chewing roasted turnip and listening to a woman sharpen her blade while reciting the names of her ancestors. She pauses only to sip mead and correct your pronunciation of Ragnarok. As the embers die down, someone plucks at a stringed instrument made from driftwood and sinew. The notes are low, haunting, full of wind and sea and things left unsaid. You close your eyes, clean, federal, slightly mystified, but somehow belonging. You've met the Vikings not just in their battle gear, but in their rituals, their grooming habits, and their laughter. You've seen their stories written in toothpicks and tattoos. And tonight, as the wind curls through the gaps in the longhouse walls, you dream not of war, but of a warm hand pressing a rune into yours. The rooster crows far too confidently for someone not wearing boots. You groan, roll over in your fur blanket, and briefly consider never moving again. But outside, the village is already stirring. Axes clanging, goats bleating, and somewhere, someone yelling, "Where are my shoes?" in Old Norse, time for Viking school. You stretch, stumble to your feet, and follow a group of children weaving between thatched roofs, herding each other more than being herded. One girl carries a bundle of sheep dung for the fire. Another has a bone stylus in her mouth, like a cigar. You're definitely not in a Roman forum anymore. Your destination is a small building tucked beside the longhouse, wooden, slightly crooked, with carved dragon heads on the corners and smoke curling from a hole in the roof. A boy opens the door and announces, "We're early, so we get to sharpen things." Charming. Inside, children of various ages sit on benches or cross-legged on the floor. No wax tablets or toga-clad instructors here. Just wooden boards, charcoal stubs, sheepskin scrolls, and one very patient man named Erika, who looks like he's taught 20 generations and regrets at least 10 of them. You take a seat next to a girl who's carving something into a plank. You peer closer. It says, "Bjorn smells like fermented goat." She glances up and smirks. He does. Welcome to Viking school. Half runes, half roast battles. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Viking education wasn't formalised like in Rome or Egypt. Children learned through oral tradition, apprenticeships, and home-based lessons. Literacy was rare, but rune literacy, that was something else entirely. Eirika begins the day by holding up a carved stick. "This is Fehu," he says. "It means wealth. It is also the first rune. It also looks like a stubborn cow walking sideways." The students repeat. "Fehu," he continues. "Urus," for strength. "Thurisas," for the giant's thorn. "Ansus," for the breath of the gods. The runes are taught not just as letters, but as symbols of ideas, forces, even protection spells. Every one of them buzzes with meaning. You're handed a soft slate of pine and a bone stylus. You attempt to carve Rido, the rune of journeys. Yours ends up looking like a fish wearing a helmet. The boy next to you snorts. "It's okay," he says. "Mine says dog when it's supposed to say grandmother." He shrugs. "She'll get the message." At the front, Eirika holds up a long staff covered in runes, lines, crosses and notches spiralling in from every side. "This is a rune stick," he explains. "Messages, records, curses. It's how we remember things when the schools are busy." He passes it around. You hold it gently, the weight of memory carved into wood. Fringe tidbits, some rune graffiti found on Viking artifacts is hilariously human. One reads, "Thorstein carved these runes while drunk." Another simply says, "Kiss me." Historians were not spared from ancient thirst posts. After runes, the class breaks for lunch. You sit with the younger kids near a low stone wall and eat flatbread with butter and dried apple slices. A boy trades his cheese for someone's smoked fish. A girl tells a story about her uncle, who once fell into a latrine and came out claiming he met Odin. The conversation shifts to gods, dreams, and a local tree spirit that allegedly whispers life advice if you pee on its roots. You do not test this theory. When school resumes, Eirika brings out a harp. "Stories," he announces. "Who remembers yesterday's saga?" Half the room groans, the other half beams. A girl stands and recites from memory the tale of Sigurd and the dragon. She mimes swinging a sword, breathing fire, and even kissing a cursed princess with dramatic flair. Applause all around. Then a boy tells a new tale, about a goat who challenged a sea serpent and lost its left horn, but gained eternal fame. It's clearly made up. It's clearly brilliant. "You're called next," You panic. You tell the story of the first time you tasted fermented herring. You describe it with the gravitas of a battlefield loss. You end with, "And that's why I still fear lunch." Thunderous applause. One girl leans over and whispers, "You should be a scald." You blush, or possibly choke on goat cheese. The afternoon ends with sparring practice. Yes, school includes light combat. Children grab wooden swords and shields and face off in pairs. Rules are loose, results are unpredictable. One boy uses a snowball as a distraction tactic. Another simply yells until his opponent drops their weapon. Erica referees with the patience of a man who once tried to teach manners to a bear. Historians still argue whether Viking children were truly trained as warriors or just play fought like kids anywhere. But here today, you see both. A culture that raises its young with laughter and grit. The day ends with a chant. The children form a circle and sing a simple song about the 9 worlds. Midgard, Asgard, Niflheim, and all the rest. Their voices rise in imperfect harmony, wild and strong. As the sun dips low behind the hills, you walk back toward the longhouse, rune-carved plank under your arm, stomach full of cheese and strange pride. You glance down at your carving. It still looks like a helmeted fish, but it's your helmeted fish, your mark on this snowy, smoky, sea-bound place. And as night falls, and the stars prick the sky like tiny runes, you think, maybe you are learning something after all. You wake to the thunk, thunk, thunk of someone sharpening a blade. Not gently, not politely, but in the rhythm of someone preparing to punch winter in the face. You rub your eyes and emerge from the longhouse, where the air is crisp, the wind smells like pine and iron, and the snow crunches underfoot like it's holding a grudge. Ahead, 2 women spar in the training yard, one with a round shield, the other with 2 short axes and 0 chill. The one with the shield knocks her opponent backward and yells, "Next!" Everyone suddenly finds something else to do. You grab a roasted barley bun and watch as more women join the training circle, clad in layered wool, fur capes, and the kind of expressions that say, "I don't lose, I just learn how to win harder next time." Welcome to the world of the shieldmaidens. Yes, they're real. No, they don't care if you're surprised. Here's your mainstream historical fact. While the historical existence of widespread female Viking warriors is debated, there is solid evidence, burials with weapons, literary references, and even genetic studies, suggesting that women sometimes fought alongside men, especially when they had something to defend. The woman with the axes waves you over. You hesitate. She throws you a practice sword. "Show me what you've got, Egypt boy." Ah, word travels fast. You step forward awkwardly. Your first swing is optimistic. She sidesteps. Your second is better. She grins. Again. Within minutes, you're sweating despite the snow. Your arm aches. Your balance wobbles. She never stops smiling. Later, she claps you on the shoulder. "You're not useless, just floppy." High praise, you assume. Nearby, a group of young girls practices throwing spears at snowmen. One snowman has horns and a very concerned expression. The tallest girl throws first, whoomp, right into its head. Everyone cheers. One of the village elders sits on a fur-lined stool, watching it all with a proud smirk. "They say the gods favour warriors," she mutters, "but they favour clever warriors more." You sit beside her, still catching your breath. She tells you about Lagertha, the shield maiden who once led warriors in Denmark. About Freydis, who sailed to Vinland and chased men off with an axe and a scream. They always forget the women, she says, until the women are the ones writing the song. Fringe tidbit. Some Norse legends describe women who disguise themselves as men to fight. Others didn't bother with disguises at all. They just showed up, in armour, with blades, and the firm understanding that no one's going to say no to a woman holding a sword and a grudge. Later, you follow a hunting party into the woods. 3 women, 2 men, and 1 hound who clearly believes it's in charge. Snowflakes fall gently, boots crunch. One of the women kneels to inspect tracks in the frost. "Deer," she says, big, or maybe just confident. You help carry. Firewood back while they haul the carcass. It's heavy. You try not to complain. The hound judges you anyway. Back in the village, the forge roars to life. 2 girls help stoke it while a third hammers a sword against the anvil. Sparks fly. She squints through the heat. It's not done, she mutters. Neither am I. You ask what she'll name it. She shrugs. Depends what it does the first time it's drawn. You nod like that's not the coolest thing you've ever heard. In the weaving hall, women spin wool into thread, while singing lullabies that shift halfway into battle chants. Patterns are woven into cloaks, runes for luck, strength, loyalty. One woman sews a dragon's head onto a sleeve. For my daughter, she says. She'll wear it when she chooses her axe. You catch a glimpse of the child, barely 10, already carving runes into a scrap of driftwood with fierce concentration. She glances up. Want me to write your name in runes? She asks. You nod. She carves slowly, carefully, then hands it over. It reads, One who learns. You smile. That tracks. Evening comes quickly, swallowing the village in cool blue. Snow flurries drift from the rooftops. Inside the longhouse the fire crackles and the air smells like roasted game and melted butter. The shieldmaidens sit together, laughing and rubbing ointment onto bruises. The woman with the axes raises a toast. To strength, to stories, to falling down and getting up louder. You drink. Later someone tells a tale of Skadi, the goddess of winter and vengeance, a woman wronged, a woman who chose the mountains over apologies. The men listen in silence. No one interrupts. Historians still argue whether shield maidens were rare exceptions or quiet traditions. But tonight, you've seen the truth carved into wood, hammered into iron, and spun into thread. They don't need your permission. They already have their place, and their blades are sharp. You head to bed beneath a sky full of northern lights, green and blue banners rippling like the breath of old gods. The fire inside warms your toes. Your arms ache in a good way. Somewhere, the little girl who carved your rune is still awake, tracing lines in the ash. You dream of strength, not loud and cruel, but quiet and steady. The kind that holds a village together, and swings an axe without asking for applause. The smell of pine tar and seaweed greets you before your eyes even open. It's still early, the kind of cold, grey morning that Viking poets might call a fine day for mayhem. Outside, boots stomp, crates clatter, and someone yells something very urgent about forgetting the dried fish. Today is raiding party prep day. You sit up and stretch, only to discover your tunic has been replaced with a freshly oiled leather vest. A gift from the shield maiden with the axes. There's a note etched into the lining. Don't bleed on the nice part. Fair enough. Outside, the longboats rest at the dock like wolves at the water's edge. Warriors move around them, loading shields, spears, salted meat, and oddly, a goose. Ship mascot, someone says. Also alarms if anyone tries to sneak off with the mead. You help lash barrels in place, your hands quickly coated in pitch and rope burn. Every item is tied down with care. These boats will slice through oceans, but they'll flip without warning if someone forgets to secure the firewood. The Jarl walks the line like a general inspecting troops. No extra axes unless you earned them, he calls. And yes, Thormund, that includes the one you hid in the goat's hay. Everyone groans. Thormund shrugs guiltily. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Viking raids weren't all mindless violence. They were calculated, seasonal operations, well timed with harvests, tides, and political distractions in target regions. The boats were fast, light, and able to navigate rivers as easily as open seas. A woman hands you a horn of fermented milk. For luck, she says, or stomach distress. Sometimes both. You down it like a brave idiot. You're given a task. Choose your weapon. You pass racks of spears, swords, axes, and bows. One is engraved with the name Storm Eater. Another simply says Gertie. You settle on a small hand axe with a carved handle and the comforting weight of probably won't take your own foot off. You're also handed a lucky charm, a carved walrus tooth with a rune etched into it. Tiwaz, the elder explains, for justice and aim. You tuck it into your belt and try not to look too flattered. The boats are almost ready. People gather near the shore, wives, husbands, children, elders, all watching with the calm focus of people who've seen this dozens of times before. A boy hugs his older sister, slipping her a carved token for protection. A mother blesses her son by daubing his forehead with soot and whispering something in his ear. He doesn't flinch. You get a farewell from the little girl who gave you your rune. She looks serious. Don't die, she says. If you do, I'll have to write your saga, and I don't like writing. You promise to try very hard not to die. Fringe tidbit, while the raiding parties were famously male-dominated, there are rare records, and at least one well-known burial, that suggest women occasionally join these voyages, especially if the target was far or the goal was settlement. Equality acts first. Before boarding, the skald steps forward and leads a chant. It's not a war song exactly, it's more steady, anchoring. Oars strike the sea, our names on the wind, storm may follow, but we begin. You join the others in repeating the lines. Even the goose honks on cue. The boats push off. Rowers dig in. The sea opens like a scroll waiting to be written in salt and bravery. Hours pass. The sky stays low. The wind rises. You pull your cloak tighter and feel the wood of your axe against your hip. It feels less like a weapon now and more like a promise. Someone vomits off the side. Someone else sings to stay awake. You're handed dried fish again, and you eat it with the grim determination of someone who has accepted their crunchy, briny fate. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were always violent or sometimes diplomatic in disguise. Truth is, a raid could turn into trade, and trade could turn into conquest, and everything in between was just another verse in the saga. As night falls, the boats pull into a hidden cove. No torches, no fire, just whispers and the soft click of blade against sheath. You sleep under your cloak, heart pounding with the quiet knowledge that tomorrow you'll step into another shore, another village, another line in a story that may or may not include your name. You dream of distant towns, gold in barrels, and a feast where your carved fish rune is held high in toast. But mostly, you dream of home, of smoky longhouses, of green threads tied behind ears, of children with stories to tell and only you to tell them. Your eyes snap open to the sound of waves crashing against wooden hull and whispered orders slicing through the fog. You're huddled beneath a damp cloak, breath misting in the cold air, and the coast of Francia, modern-day France, is looming out of the gloom like a guilty secret. The target is Paris. Yes, that Paris. Though in this century, it's not quite croissants and romance yet. It's timber walls, narrow riverbanks, and just enough money inside to make a Viking's heart sing. The boat slows. Oars dip silently into the water. The Seine shimmers like a steel ribbon beneath the moon, and your longboat glides toward the city, like a shark with really committed carpentry. The Jarl raises his hand, the signal. The boats behind you fan out. Shields are lifted, axes checked, helmets strapped tight. A woman near you grins and mutters, "Hope the cheese is worth it." You wonder if she's joking. You sincerely hope not. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Vikings did raid Paris, famously in 845 CE under the leadership of Ragnar Lodbrok, or maybe someone else with better PR. They sailed up the Seine with dozens of ships, overwhelmed the city's defences, and extracted a massive ransom in silver. It was less a siege and more a very aggressive business meeting. As the boat brushes the bank, you leap onto land with everyone else. Mud squelches beneath your boots. The mist muffles every sound except your own heartbeat, which is thudding like someone trying to start a fire with just fear and optimism. Ahead, the city gates loom, wooden, fortified, and only lightly guarded this early in the morning. The element of surprise is sharp in the air. Then, a horn. Not yours. Theirs. Someone spotted you. "Run!" someone hisses. The gates swing open. Torches flare. A handful of Frankish soldiers stumble out in half-dressed panic, holding swords like they're still deciding which way is up. And then it begins. The clash is fast, chaotic, loud. You duck under a spear, raise your shield in time to deflect a panicked blow, and, almost gracefully, trip over a wheelbarrow full of soggy bread. You recover, swing, miss-swing again. A glancing hit to someone's shield sends them sprawling, more from surprise than skill. A Viking near you bellows, "For Odin, for silver, for lunch," and charges into the fray. The skirmish is over quickly. The guards retreat into the city, leaving the outer courtyard smoking and scattered with broken crates, dropped coins, and one very confused goose, possibly the same one from your ship. You advance through the gates. Paris, as it exists now, is mostly timber houses, narrow alleys, and riverside docks. It smells like wet wool and boiled cabbage. Your group fans out. Some head for the church, others toward the treasury. You stay with a pair of shieldmaidens who move with the quiet competence of people who've burned down at least 3 monasteries before breakfast. You pass a bakery where fresh loaves sit cooling on the window ledge. One woman pauses. "Would be a shame," she says, and takes a bite mid-raid. You follow her into a small courtyard where resistance flares, a group of townsmen with pitchforks and pot lids for shields. One swings a broom. Brave, futile. Your axe connects with a barrel instead of a man. Wine spills. Someone slips. Chaos again. Eventually, it calms. And then comes the shouting from the main road. You rush to the edge of the square and see a group of Vikings wheeling a heavy chest toward the boats. It's silver, or cheese, possibly both. You hope for both, preferably layered. Fringe tidbit. During one of the real sieges, the Franks reportedly tried to pay the Vikings to leave. And it worked. Diplomacy through bribery. It might not be noble, but it's very relatable. You hear the chants before you see them. Monks praying from a nearby church tower. Their voices shake but don't break. A few Vikings hesitate. One nods respectfully. Not all raids are pure destruction. Some, oddly, are quiet. You step inside a scriptorium. Scrolls are scattered. One lays open to a painted page. Gold leaf, saints in blue robes, vines twining across the parchment like veins. You hesitate. Then gently close it and leave it on the table. Not every treasure has to be taken. Outside, someone yells "Fire!" Not as a command, but as a warning. A thatched roof near the docks has caught. Flames rise, you sprint back, shield raised, heart hammering. Villagers scream. Vikings scramble to pull boats away from the flames. You grab a bucket. Another. It's not just about stealing now, it's about survival. Together, you douse the edge of the dock. Embers fizzle. The fire retreats, hissing like a furious god. Smoke fills your nose. Your tunic is singed, but you're alive, and the boats are loaded. As the sun rises through ash-grey clouds, you climb back aboard. The Seine carries you away, the oars creaking with the rhythm of bruised muscles and mild regret. Someone hands you a wedge of cheese. "You earned it," they say. You take a bite. It's glorious. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were about conquest, desperation, or simply opportunity. But from the look on everyone's faces, soot-streaked, grinning, exhausted, it was about something else too. Glory. Not the shiny marble kind, the messy, muddy, real kind. The kind where your name is shouted across a hall years later. Half remembered, half exaggerated, all yours. As the boat sails onward, the wind picks up, and you think of home, of goats, of toasted bread, of a small wooden rune carved by a child who said, "Don't die." You haven't. Not yet. The sea smooths out like silk stretched across the edge of the world. Your arms ache from rowing. Your boots are still damp. Your tunic smells like a combination of seawater, roasted meat, and faintly toasted cheese, which, if you're being honest, isn't the worst scent you've carried home from an adventure. The longboats are turning north now, homeward. You sit among your crewmates, each of them nursing sore limbs and small bruises like trophies. One man shows off a cut on his shin. It was a guard with a spear, he says. You fell off a cart, someone else mutters. Into a spear, he insists. Close enough. The river narrows, the trees grow taller. You pass a cluster of waterbirds rising from the reeds, startled into the sky like scattered thoughts. Behind you, Paris fades into the mist, still standing, still smouldering, still echoing with a memory of boots and blades. Ahead lies home. The boat rocks gently. Someone begins a song. Not loud, not rowdy, but steady. A chant more than a melody. You join in, your voice slotting into the others like a missing stone in a long worn wall. Oars in the sea, sun on the prow, silver behind us, stories now. Here's your mainstream historical fact. After raids or expeditions, Viking warriors often returned home, not just with wealth, but with news, descriptions of foreign lands, new technologies, unfamiliar customs. They weren't just fighters, they were bridges between worlds. As your longboat glides into the fjord, you see the village ahead, smoke curling peacefully from rooftops, figures gathered by the shore, torches lit along the docks, and at the front, children jumping up and down. One of them waves a carved stick wildly. You realise it's your rune, the one the little girl gave you before you left. She's still holding it, still waiting. Your boat bumps the dock. You disembark, legs wobbling, greeted with cheers and laughter, and one goat that immediately tries to eat your cloak, your back. A woman grabs your arm. My son says you swung an axe and slipped on a goose. You nod gravely. The goose had it coming. She cackles and hands you a bowl of stew. It's warm, salty, perfect. You walk through the village as the rest of the raiders return, dragging crates of goods, armfuls of cloth, and more than one slightly dented Frankish helmet. Children crowd around them, poking at everything. Did you see a dragon? One asks. No, a warrior answers, but I saw a man with teeth like a broken comb. That's worse, the child says. Later that night, the longhouse fills with the sounds of spoons clanking, flames crackling, and stories retold with just enough embellishment to keep things interesting. Your raid group gets louder with every retelling. The man who fell off the cart is now claiming he flew. Someone else describes a coin so large it required 2 Vikings and a goat to carry it. The goat in question looks unimpressed. Fringe tidbit. Viking sagas often blended fact and fiction. The line between what happened and what should have happened was delightfully blurry. What mattered most was how well you told it. You get a turn, you stand, raise your cup, and speak. I saw a goose defeat a guard, a bakery untouched by flame, and a scroll that shimmered gold in the firelight. I brought nothing back, except a story. Everyone applauds. Someone throws a hunk of bread at your head. You consider it an honorary laurel. The skald stands next and begins a saga already forming from the raid. Names are inserted, details stitched together. You're not just in the room anymore. You're in the story. And once you're in the story, you never really leave. Historians still argue whether these oral tales were remembered accurately. But maybe accuracy was never the point. Maybe legacy lives best in rhythm, not records. You slip outside for air. The northern lights sway above, slow green banners across a navy sky. The cold stings your cheeks, the snow creaks beneath your boots, and the village behind you glows with warmth and firelight. Someone joins you on the hill, a woman with a sword strapped across her back and a jug of mead in her hand. We leave again in spring, she says. East this time. You nod. Not a yes, but not a number. She offers you the jug. You drink. Back inside, children are gathered around the fire, drawing on birch bark, trying to sketch the battle from your tale. One draws a goose the size of a cow. Another draws a boat with wings. You don't correct them. You sit with the little girl, Who gave you your rune? She holds up the stick. Still lucky, she says. You press it gently back into her palm. Now it's your turn. She beams. You fall asleep in the corner of the longhouse, curled in furs, firelight flickering across the beams above. Your hands still marked with soot, sea salt, and memory. You dream not of war, but of the quiet between oars, the breath before the chant, the hush before the story begins again. The snow is thinner now. What was once a thick white quilt across the land has receded into patches, like the earth is slowly waking up, shaking off the cold. Streams crackle with meltwater. The air smells different, damp moss, tree bark, and the faint promise of green. Spring has arrived in Viking Scandinavia, and with it, renewal. You stretch beneath your fur cloak and sit up slowly, rubbing a shoulder that still remembers a certain fall from a barrel in Paris. Outside, the village is buzzing, not with raiders this time, but with farmers. The axes are still sharp. They just have different targets now. You walk past men and women turning the soil with iron-tipped ploughs. Oxen grunt. Children chase each other with sticks that are absolutely not weapons, despite the battle cries. The longhouse, once heavy with smoke and stories, is being cleaned from top to bottom. You missed the goat in the rafters, someone calls. You do not ask for clarification. The rhythm of the village has changed. It's less about war chants and more about work songs. Less about sharpening blades and more about sharpening scythes. Yet there's a calm here, a confidence, because everyone knows their role. Even the loudest warrior helps build fences. Even the skald, in between verses, lifts a shovel. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Vikings weren't constantly at sea. The majority were farmers and craftsmen who lived settled lives most of the year. Raiding was seasonal, an event, not a lifestyle. Fields needed planting, families needed feeding, and goats always needed wrangling. You help patch the roof of the smithy. The woman beside you is hammering shingles in place with terrifying accuracy. My husband went east, she says. I stay here. We build both ways. Later you join a group boiling down tree sap into sticky syrup. A girl dips a wooden spoon into the bubbling pot and offers it to you. It burns your tongue and tastes like forest sunlight. High marks, fringe tidbit, Viking sweets existed, though rare. Honey, tree sap, dried fruits, and even imported sugar in later periods. Some feasts featured cakes made of oats and berries, occasionally flavoured with herbs or flowers. Yes, even Viking warriors appreciated dessert. By the riverside, boat builders are at work. They're crafting a new longboat, sleek, elegant, and already smelling of pine pitch and sea ambition. Young apprentices haul planks. An old man carves the dragon head for the prow. You watch as he etches runes along the jawline. For protection, he mutters, and personality. You ask what the dragon's name will be. He shrugs. Depends what it eats first. Across the way, women dye wool with crushed berries and tree bark. The colours swirl in vats like tiny storms, deep reds, sky blues, earthy greens. A child drops a sock into the wrong vat. The result is experimental. She names it battle colour. You spend the afternoon helping an elderly couple rebuild their chicken fence. The chickens are ungrateful. One bites your boot. The woman laughs. He thinks it's bread. The man shakes his head. He thinks everything is bread. They invite you in for stew. It's mostly turnips. Still delicious. As evening approaches, you wander back toward the longhouse and notice something strange. Quiet, not silence, but the kind of hush that suggests the village is listening, waiting. You enter the longhouse to find the skald standing at the hearth, arms raised, a hush falling like snow. Tonight, he says, we light the fire for those who do not return, and for those who bring them home in stories. Everyone gathers. Torches are passed. A large pile of kindling and wood is built just outside the hall, interwoven with runes, feathers, locks of hair, and tiny carvings. The fire is lit. It roars up into the night sky. Sparks swirl like gold dust. Children stare wide-eyed. Elders close their eyes. Someone begins to sing, a soft, low chant that rises in waves. The skald begins a tale. It's not about a god or a king. It's about a girl with a green thread behind her ear. A fisherman's son who dreamed of far-off shores and a strange visitor from the south who carved a fish that wore a helmet. Everyone listens. And slowly, you realise he's talking about you. Not by name, not exactly. But your story has slipped into theirs now, woven into the night like smoke and rune ink. Historians still argue whether oral traditions preserve facts or just feelings. But here, surrounded by song and firelight, you understand. The feeling is the fact. The memory is the legacy. You sit beside the little girl who gave you your rune. She holds your hand silently. When the fire crackles particularly loud, she whispers, "That's them." Listening. Later, the stars come out. You lie back in the grass, belly full, heart strange and quiet. The skald's voice still echoes behind you. And when they returned, they were not the same, but neither was the land, because both had changed the other. You close your eyes, you breathe, and for the first time, you feel not like a visitor, but like a part of the story. The last snow melts in the shade of the mountains. The fjords ripple with lazy waves. The boats are docked, their hulls drying in the sun like basking sea serpents. The smell of pine smoke and wet earth hangs in the air, soft as a wool blanket left out in the spring breeze. You walk the village paths slowly now, nodding at familiar faces, faces that once eyed you like a mystery and now greet you like kin. A child chases a chicken across your path. The chicken wins again. The world feels lighter. It's time to leave. Not because you must, but because the thread is winding to its end. You pause by the longhouse one last time. Its beams are freshly tarred, the roof patched and clean. From inside, the sounds of laughter and low music drift out, like the lingering memory of a story still being told. A young man is carving a new panel for the outer wall. It shows a longboat cresting a wave, sails stretched like wings. You look closer. There's a tiny figure at the helm. No name, no face, just a stance, awkward, determined, clearly someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing, but does it anyway. You smile. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Viking Age eventually faded, not in a blaze of glory, but in gradual transformation. Christianity spread. Trade replaced raiding. The world changed, and so did its people. But the spirit, the yearning for movement, meaning and memory, never left. Fringe tidbit. Some Norse graves contain both Christian crosses and Thor's hammer pendants. Historians think this wasn't confusion, but hedging bets. A little faith here, a little insurance there. As you prepare to say goodbye, a small ceremony unfolds. You're gifted a pouch of earth from the fjord's edge, so you always carry home with you. A green thread, like the one behind the girl's ear, is tied around your wrist, and the skald, eyes shining, hands you a rune-carved token shaped like a boat. "You carried our story," he says. "Now carry yours." You board a smaller vessel, this one built for a different kind of journey. Not a raid, not a return, but something softer, a drifting, a remembering. As the sail snaps to life, you glance back one last time. The longhouse, the goats, the hill where the first snowball battle began. The child waving with both arms and no rhythm. You wave back, not goodbye, just a nod. Now the sea, wide, blue, gentle. The sky above you is full of quiet motion, clouds crawling, birds wheeling, time shifting gears, and then, slowly, softly, we enter the wind down. The wind hums softly through the rigging, a lullaby written in breeze and old rope. Your hands, resting on the boat's edge, are warm from the sun and still scented faintly of wood smoke. The sea is calm now, rippling gently beneath the hull like a vast, sleepy animal, breathing deep in its dreams. The sky blushes at the edges, just the faintest pink and amber, like the gods dipped a brush into honey and touched the corners of the world. No more battles, no more raids, just the soft hush of oars tucked away, sails furled, stories settling into silence. You tilt your head back, feeling the breeze in your hair, and let your thoughts drift like gulls over water, Egypt's golden sands, Rome's fading marble, the smoky hearths of a northern hall. You've walked through time, listened to the thump of sandals, the echo of axes, the laughter of children who wear history like a second skin. And now, here at the edge of all things, you're allowed to rest. Inhale the smell of pine, exhale the weight of worry, inhale that soft salty tang of sea, exhale everything else. The boat rocks gently, gently, as if cradling you. And in this moment, you are not past or future, not hero or visitor. You're just you, still, safe, and slowly, gently, deeply drifting into dreams.